absolutely.
Maybe they couldn't.
Yeah, I actually have.
They couldn't pin it or whatever at that time. Or
I don't
something.
know. I don't even know if she. You know, I said surgery again. I could be completely
Yeah.
wrong.
Okay. No,
She.
that's all right.
I think they. I asked her. She said she did have an external cast. So you had the bar and it kind of screw into the bones on the sides of it. So she's got one of those going on.
Of course.
Yeah. So
That's what, I saw that picture. Randy showed me a picture at the last
okay.
their workshop.
That's something special in it.
Good.
That's something special.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Brian and I were here strategizing. We think we've got the coup pretty much laid out.
So they were laughing. Yeah, they remembered who you I thought it was a constant thing, right?
There's a constant state of coup.
Aaron, are you a voting member?
Manageable.
A manageable coup. The thing is, you got to really want it to take it over.
Well, that doesn't matter.
So I did ask. I guess another point. When we get to this, if we could do
TAC.
goal 5 first.
Probably are.
Jennifer and I got one of us at least for certain.
I know the military is.
Yeah. Because that's
CDOT's a voting member.
The other ones, I think we're all in
yeah.
violent agreement over. I don't think we're going to argue.
Couldn't remember suddenly.
And I don't know if we're going to argue on this one. I think we just want to have a discussion.
1, 2,
Get to that.
3.
Motion or request. Goal 5 first.
Yeah. And,
I think we have plenty of time to probably all of them.
Well, I hope so. I just
Yeah, because, I mean,
okay.
for 3,
I
it's
think
an
you're
hour.
ex officio.
I think that you did get that action item.
Okay, there we got 5.
do you want to
That's
start
definitely
with
a
goal
4.
5, just in case? Well, I guess we could always
I think 5 might take
see how we're
longer.
going. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Roberts?
we'll see. When we get to that point, we'll ask the question.
Yeah.
See how far we are.
One,
Darren was ex officio members.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
We can call you back.
But we got 5 that are definitely voting.
Yeah, I'm only a couple days behind. Oh, technically that area is still in the county, but Kathleen raised her hand and said, well, we're taking over that.
You could come up
The
here.
Black Forest?
No, the Mark Shuffle thing.
Oh, that one. Yeah,
She's raised her hand and said,
she did?
yes,
In the email that I sent, or?
I want to hear what he had to
like
say.
months ago, because, we still have that project still on the PPRTA list. She still said
First time he's up for it.
county's taking over or
No.
city's taking over
They
sponsorship of
denied him,
that.
I think, 2 other
We
times.
still own and maintain it at this point, though.
You guys agreeing to give it to us?
He said today, I'm going, really? You don't have.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awful.
Taking another portion of it already.
Just south of Dublin?
No,
Don't, I am a voting member on
We
this.
got 5.
Oh, by North Carefree.
yes.
Yeah. I'm
Those
aware
little
of that.
details you never
Yeah.
think about. until
Yeah,
Suddenly
till
you're in
you
the
need
hot
it,
seat.
yeah.
Yeah.
You need it, yeah.
I'm just going to sit over here by myself.
Talking about
If anybody wants to change, that would be fine, but I'm okay with it.
And we love you, Brian.
Okay.
It's good that you're secure in yourself.
I've seen him. I was like, really?
Well, I just have to conspire with Anton of which one of us is leaving early. Yeah, so that's why I sat by him.
So the deputy's one who gets to go to the less favorable fun meeting. So you'll know how much he thinks of this place. when it's the last day or something.
Oh,
Is Victoria still,
she's on leave.
oh, okay.
Well, it's good to have you back here. And
Thank you.
be glad to have Victoria back with us, too.
She will be.
It was really well received in the Air Force. It's very well
I
received.
don't know if this place would be without Victoria anymore.
Before we get started, would you all please make sure that the blue light is turned on your speakers, on your microphone? Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you for attending this month's Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. Call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum. Thank you all for showing up. And let's start with introductions. Jennifer?
Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County.
Anton Ramage, El Paso County.
Tim Roberts, City of Colorado Springs.
Aaron Busto, Federal Highway Administration.
Wendy Pettit, CDOT Region 2.
Ken Prather, PPACG.
Rick Arfin, Fort Carson.
Aaron Hosmeyer, Schriever Air Force Base.
Brian Vituli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metro Transit. And in the audience, please.
Adam Copper, City of Colorado Springs.
Okay, and staff.
Jennifer Valentine, PPACG staff.
Kevin Reyes, PPACG.
Bethany Stromer.
You can't get away.
I'm behind so hard. Jessica McMullen with PPACG. And Jenny Lang with PPACG.
All right, thank you. Agenda approval. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Did you have a comment, Tim?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody?
You need
That
to
would
get a
like to
photo
share.
of the TAC for the new website. Please?
Oh, okay.
You guys want to do it next month?
I think so. When we have better showing, sure. Can I wait till then? Okay. All right. Okay.
I'll just make sure I Photoshop really well.
All right, thanks. Anything else? Okay, approval of last month's June 15th TAC minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Are there any questions?
Move for approval.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
I'm abstaining
you.
it since I wasn't there.
Sure, thank you. Okay, item 5, Board of Directors report from last week's board meeting.
The board approved tip administrative change 6, tip amendment number 10, and after some discussion, the board approved the tip policy, the ending or the modification of the note policy with the TAC recommended, and approved the new 4-year tip in the future instead of a 6-year tip. And then they also approved the 2018-2019 UPWP.
Yeah, it was a good discussion, and staff did a great job presenting both of those items, especially the tip policy item. And yeah, there was even more discussion that we really never heard from the board, kind of on top of what they sent it back to the committees for in December. And it's just, it was kind of all new news that came out, but they ended up approving it, and there was some very good support from the other board members, so it was good. So thanks again to staff for administering that process. It worked out pretty well for everybody. And, unanimous consent from the TAC and the CAC is kind of rare, and it was a pretty big thing this time. So thanks again.
Was the board unanimous too?
I believe they were, yeah. Yep.
It didn't sound like it was going to be the way
Right.
a lot of the questions were going on, but after everything was answered, they went that way.
Yep. Okay, item 6A, first action item, FY 2017 to 2022 TIP Amendment 11. Kevin.
Good afternoon, Kevin Reyes, Transportation Planner here with PPACG. So today I'm going over the 2017-2022 Amendment number 11 for the TIP Amendment number 11. Amendment number 11 comes in 3 different parts. So the first part is coming to us from the City of Colorado Springs. They are requesting to add $2,863,000 of CDOT permanent water quality mitigation pool funds with a $2 million local match. And they're planning to design, construct, and maintain a full spectrum basin at the northwest corner of Powers and Research. The second part of the amendment is coming from CDOT, and they're requesting to add $900,000 of bridge on-system funds to the TIP. $720,000 of those funds will be programmed in fiscal year 2018, and $180,000 will be programmed in 2019. And they plan to repair and realign the culvert needing attention on State Highway 94 between mile marker 3.5 and 4.5. The last part of Amendment 11 comes also from CDOT. Their fiscal year ended on July 1st, so they are providing us with the new funding amounts that we are receiving. And hopefully the writing I put in here might be a little bit confusing, but I'll go ahead and clarify that. So maybe actually pull up a table here. How do we get? Can you get me out of this window real fast, Bethany? There we go. Thank you. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So just to show everyone, make sure we're on the same page. I had this included in the CAC packet, but for some reason it wasn't in the TAC packet. So this table here shows the funding amounts that we are receiving. So the old funding amount for STP Metro in fiscal year 2018 was $7,670,000. We now have $7,947,000, and here it shows the difference. So for all of these funding categories, we're receiving additional funds, and then over here on the right, it's showing how much unprogrammed funds we have as a result of that. So this is just showing the last change there from CDOT for the funding pools in our region. So those are the three changes for amendment number 11. Does anyone have any questions on those?
Go ahead, Tim.
How soon do we need to program those monies, those available funds?
That's a good question.
Don't have to do anything with it.
Okay. Don't have to do anything.
If you have projects that have a shortfall, this would be the first round of money that would be available to do that.
Jennifer.
Or another option may be to move some money forward in out years. Okay.
However, our new TIP policy is we're going to leave the last year unfunded, right? Or unprogrammed?
Our policy now is to just do a 4-year tip
Right.
instead of a 6-year tip.
Okay.
Kevin, so up there, under the difference column for CMAQ, there's a $368,000 surplus. Should that be the same number under unprogrammed funds?
So the reason it's not the same, my understanding was one of the projects received additional funds. Is that right, Wendy? Something happened there with the.
Well, you should have put my spreadsheet in here. That would have been easy. I didn't bring it with me to be able to tell. Do you have it on your computer where you can pull it up?
I don't think I only have a letter from you. I don't think I have a spreadsheet. But in the letter that you mentioned that.
So.
And all of them are slightly off a little bit.
We had a project that was closed that returned money back to the pool. So that money was the $401,675 is what got returned.
Is that the park and ride?
Which park and ride?
I don't know. I thought one of
It's
the returns was a park and ride.
It's not the Falcon one.
No,
I
Okay.
can tell you that one.
no.
Okay.
I don't remember which one it is. I have a whole spreadsheet that had all the projects and everything on it, but I didn't bring it with me today. Kevin and I worked off of that to put this in. So the difference that we have here that's a roll forward is from a project closure. And it might have been more than one, if I remember correctly. One of them had more than one.
Yeah, there's some reason like that. Where it's
So
not
the
completely
difference,
matched.
the only difference we had in programming from the true-up in fiscal years, we had like an $82,000, $80,000, what was it? Do you remember the true-up number?
Yeah, it was a very small number. I remember.
And that was in TAP, right? $87 is what we had to true up in TAP. So there was roll forward money in TAP, so that took care of what we had there. So you had unprogrammed money in 2017, so there was actually $87 more than that $205,000 that's there. Because that that figure rolled forward from 2017, so that was unprogrammed from 2017 from the very beginning. We never programmed that it was like $290,000. We didn't have a project that we could put it into, so and nobody had the extra funding at that point to be able to backfill that when we made that big change. So what we have available, that 205 is a roll forward from 2017, and 401 and the 272 are both project closure amounts that have been returned back to the pool. So that's where those differences came from. Everything else is still programmed 100%. Nothing's changed, except for that $87. So that's the only difference that we have. Does
All
that
right,
make sense?
so we're short of the unprogrammed fund amount.
So,
that's-
yeah,
that's a
we're
good- they're good
$87
numbers.
is all
Okay.
we were short in this roll forward at the end of the year.
Might just, not, and I don't know how to tell you to do this, but you might want to just add a footnote in there, so I'm sure the CAC would pick up on that, and maybe even some board members, so just some way to,
Just to say why the unprogrammed funds is different from
Yeah.
the difference
Yeah.
there. Yeah, that makes sense. I'll make sure.
And we've identified this, that's a good point. When Kevin and I were working on this a couple weeks ago, we set up a notes area that he has the ability to pull up in his spreadsheet, so he knows exactly what happened in that year and what we did with it. So that way, if he has a question 6 months from now, he can go back and he can pull it up. Because someday I won't be here to answer the question, and he's going to have to be able to figure it out. I remember what it was. And it's hard to keep track of all these things. Trust me, I know. I have a computer full of all these kind of things. So we've been working on that to be able to keep track of every single thing. So we even built into the spreadsheet so we can go back and look at the year before, so we can see exactly, we can compare them side by side. So we've been working on this. And just to reiterate something I said to Kevin when I walked in, he and I worked on this 2 weeks ago, and it was amazing. We made all the changes, we put the extra funding in, and guess what? It balanced!
Yay.
So, with that being said, I mean, this gentleman here is an amazing young man with that Excel spreadsheet. So he's doing a good job, and he's keeping things in place. So you can go back and tell Kathleen that it balanced.
I will tell her that.
So I just wanted to let you all know that he's doing a great job.
Definitely.
all right, thanks, Wendy. Are
So-
there any other comments?
A question, so then, my understanding is there is a surplus of CMAQ.
Correct.
And it's maybe, do we know the dollar amount, or is it the 400 and, I'm blind, I can't see that.
401.
401, okay.
So that could go to your shortfall. It could go with our new policy. It could go anywhere.
With the new policy, and I guess it starts with the day the board approved it, we said that we would review dollars available on a quarterly basis and cost overruns on a quarterly basis. And we would address those cost overruns. And then if there was any money left over, it would go towards new projects. Now, what we didn't really address, or I don't remember it, was your comment, Jennifer, of using it to advance a project.
But we've always been able to do that.
We've always, it doesn't free up any dollars. I mean, it
Doesn't
just
preclude
changes
that.
the year that those dollars are available. But
Correct.
certainly gets a project advanced, but I guess we'd have to balance that with the maintenance requirements, which one has a priority.
So are those the federal dollar amount? Okay.
So then, what year is the 401 available, or is that spread out over the whole?
Right now.
Right now,
Have
18.
we used for it?
okay. Maybe.
I'm sure
So,
lots of people.
Our first quarterly look would be when? I was thinking
Board approved it in
September.
July, so
That would be our first quarter is the end of September. But you could do whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. I just need to know where we start.
the board approved it in July. If we keep it on a calendar quarter, it's probably the easiest way to remember it, so.
So if someone has a use for that, in this quarter, would that be a legitimate use, or do we wait till the second quarter of the fiscal year? Because if they have a use for it now, they might be able to put it in and get it in the construction season, but if we wait till the second quarter, then they've missed the construction season. That's a PPACG call.
Okay, so July, we'd be addressing the,
July to August or September.
I don't know that the month is so critical, as long as we do it every
Right.
3 months.
Correct.
So if we're doing it now with the idea that we're looking at the end of June balances, we can do it. We just need to make sure that everybody's aware of it, so that come next month, when whoever's, or 2 weeks from now, when all the requests would be due, that they've all got the same amount of time to develop the request and give it the first go-around next month.
So we send an email out, blast?
Yeah,
saying
it
this
would
fund's
have, it would have to
available.
be.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will send an email stating if you have cost overruns or you need additional funds, then submit those to us for the next TAC meeting then?
Mhm.
Okay.
So I would request, mail out is in 3 weeks. This is the first time that we will be putting this together. I'd give ourselves at least half a week to put it all together, and since we don't have a standard format for everybody, to try to condense it, or whatever we're going to do for it before the mail out. So we'll request that no later than 2.5 weeks from today, whatever that date is, something like that.
Okay.
We will get that email out later today or tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Maybe Sunday? Just kidding.
It may be.
All right, any other questions or comments for item 6A? Could I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
And aye.
Okay, item 6B, 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan, Objectives and Targets. And I just wanted to say thanks again to all the TAC members who've been able to participate in the last 2 workshops to get these nailed down. And a lot of good discussion, a lot of good work was done, and thanks to PPACG staff for making it go pretty easy. So, thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate that, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we've had 2 TAC workshops up till now. We had the first one back in May, or back in April, to establish our objectives. And then we had a second meeting in July, I guess last week, to establish our targets. Just a quick reminder, the objectives specify what the region wants to accomplish, and the targets specify by how much. So just keeping that in mind. And in the mail-out, we sent out kind of a draft template of kind of what they look like. And let me just pull that up real quick. So, and as a quick reminder, the Board of Directors also approved 5 goals, and each of these objectives and targets stem from those goals. And in your memo, I have 3 bullet points that state that there's a few more things that we need to discuss as a committee today. Hoping that we get a recommendation. If we can't, that's no problem. We can take this again next month and discuss it a little bit more. But the things that we need to discuss are all under goal number 5. So we can just go ahead and start with that. So here we have goal number 5, which says improve the competitiveness of the regional economy and residents' quality of life through strategic transportation investments and integrated transportation technology. And so underneath that, we have 4 objectives. So the first objective here is for the environment. It says improve or mitigate impacts to the critical habitat, stormwater runoff, and stormwater quantity and air quality. And so we have some baseline data here, just kind of saying what we know about each of these. So the first thing with critical habitats, we said the region has 1,463 miles of roads. 314 miles of that is located in critical habitats. So 21% of the roads are in critical habitats. That's what we know about that. Second one, stormwater runoff. There are 83,000 square miles of road or impervious surface in the PPACG region, only including collector and above. So that's the baseline data we have for that. The last one here is for air quality. We don't currently have a number on that, but we can certainly get it as we use the MOVES model, which is what our environmental person does. So we can get the baseline data for that. But for the discussion today on this specific objective, we need to first of all decide if we want to have these as targets, and if we do, then how do we want to measure them? So at the TAC workshop, we could not agree if these should be addressed as targets and scoring criteria. Several people mentioned that because of environmental regulations are addressed in the NEPA process, establishing these as performance measures would be redundant. So I guess I can just open it up for discussion today and see if there are any other thoughts on that. Here we have just some recommendations from PPACG on how we could measure these as targets if we were going to go that route. So yeah, I'll just open it up for discussion here.
Yeah, I have a question, a comment, and a recommendation all in one item here. And I want to keep them all together just to help me get out what I need to get out, but also I can certainly repeat each of them if anybody needs to hear them. But because I know this economic vitality goal, I mean, I think it's wonderful that we're down to 5 goals, and this is a huge improvement from other plans, and it should relate very well into all of us project applicants having less to fill out and to write, and less staff to evaluate and score. So I guess, to lead it off here, my question is, Ken or staff, can you give us some insight of how, I mean, right now we're in the objective and targets development phase of this. How can these objectives and targets evolve into the next step, which will be the scoring? Because, and now I'll go into my comment. What I'm afraid of is we have five goals, and in past planning cycles, we've had 17 goals, 13 goals, and we've had 17 and 13 evaluation criteria. So I'd hate to see this really streamlined, efficient process go into now having us all have to address, let's see, I think we're, with the way things stand here, we have 17 objectives. So I would hate to see for us to evolve into something bigger than where we thought it was going to go. So my recommendation is if we can't reach agreement on environmental objective, an infill objective, or anything else, and there's really no good way to collect the data or track it or measure it, could we at least leave them in, and if we can track them, do that, and measure our progress toward meeting that goal, but maybe not assign a scoring criterion to that. That's my question. So that's my question, comment, and recommendation. So, we have 5 goals, and I think that's great. But if we, and I like the objectives. These objectives, I know the city feels very strongly of monitoring or seeing what progress can be made toward infill. I mean, there's infill actually all throughout our region. I mean, Fountain has infill opportunities, Manitou Springs has infill opportunities, even the county. And I think it's an important item to measure. But, you know, I would not lose any sleep on it if it wasn't included as a, you know, scoring criteria. I mean, could a way to do this is, you know, kind of keep an open application system where us applicants write our projects based on, you know, we'll have 5 goal areas, and then you tailor your project application toward where you think it hits with all the objectives. If you think it makes some stormwater improvements or some critical habitat improvements or some infill improvements, you can mention that, and I don't know, you know, you get points for it. I'm just throwing that out. But I think there's a way that we can kind of get away from the head-butting and losing sleep over trying to get these things right, because this is the third planning cycle, and we've never really been able to agree on any good scoring criteria for environment or infill, but, you know, we kind of all think that they are important.
And they're
So-
hard to measure,
They are, yep.
because a lot of the rules and regulations and the things that happen around these areas are things that are not within the transportation area's control. It's land use and it's other things, and then we don't have control over those aspects in
Yeah.
Colorado.
Or they're addressed as the project's getting designed or implemented or whatever,
Right.
so, yeah.
Brian,
Okay.
I like the way you're thinking very much, because I think it also takes into account that the different entities that are represented here have different strategic plans that goes beyond just transportation, whether it's going to be business friendly within the city, or business friendly in the county, or residential growth that may be for another region. That it gives, it doesn't hamstring the transportation portion of it when the other goals and objectives may reach out and say, we want to do this here, but our transportation goals and objectives don't support a greater good. So I do like the idea of finding a way to not lose the thought process, but monitor it and be able to incorporate maybe in future plans after we kind of bring an entire total plan together. So I support the way you're thinking for certain.
Thanks.
Gives you a macro perspective versus the micro perspective.
Well, yeah, and it kind of gets us away from trying to solve everything right now. I mean, right now we're dealing with objectives and targets, and let's not even go into the evaluation criteria and scoring process now when we don't have to. But just looking forward, if we still can't come up with a good way to have criteria for each of these objectives, I would suggest at least leave them in and just monitor where we can. And
So how about some sort of a report out on the plan's project selection, what goes into the fiscally constrained plan? Everybody submits those projects with your process in place where you're talking about making sure that these attributes are identified in the application. And then as those projects are selected, then there's some kind of report out of how many projects met reducing, or we can, that's the way we can measure how this worked or whether it didn't work. But I don't know any other way, like I said, because we don't have control over the pieces and parts that make those things happen. Most of those are done at the city level, the county level, and they're out of our control.
Well, as a plan, we're going to have to do what Wendy says. That's the law, that our plan must report on how it's achieving our targets. So after we select the package of projects, however many they may be, we have to evaluate that package and say, here's what our targets were, and here's what these selected package is going to do. It's going to get us 25% of the way to our target in safety. It's not doing anything at all for economic vitality. It's doing 10% for mobility, or it's doing 100% for maintenance. we're going to have to come up with that reporting procedure. That's a requirement. I would like to see PPACG be able to start doing an annual report on how we are achieving, what is the status of transportation in the region? Kind of like the annual, whatever it is that the president does, State of the Union, and we'll do state of transportation.
State of the region, yeah.
In the region, that requires data on an annual basis or frequent basis to be able to do that. That then becomes part of the justification and needs identification for the next plan, 4 years down the road. So we know what data we've got. We know how recent it is. That theoretically can all be done completely independent of scoring. It's simply what projects are in there and how do they get us toward our goal, objectives, targets. Saying that, we still have to come up with some way of scoring the projects and differentiating between them that on a regional basis. And I appreciate Jennifer's comments and Anton's about, different strategic goals for each of the local entities and what they want to do and how they want to develop and what they don't want in their area and what businesses and types that they do want. Those are all different. But we're developing a regional plan that unfortunately may well and always has had, what's the right word, obstacles to some local goals and objectives. Just like we have in air quality, mandated air quality carbon monoxide goal. But some projects that increase mobility, which is also one of our past goals, actually worsen air quality. So they are competing goals. Both are goals. They're both important to us. But at least one method of addressing mobility makes air quality worse. And so, depending on the project, you would score well under one scoring criteria and not score as well on the other. So we may have competing goals, especially from the urban communities versus the rural communities, the big communities versus the small communities. And we've always had that issue. We've tried to address some of it, with the new small project funding category that we don't have the big guys competing and out-competing the little guys. It's always been an issue that I don't think we've ever solved, urban versus rural. So we'll still have to address that, and I think I would disagree with a little bit with saying, we'll put it off till next time and solve it, because we've been saying that for the last 4 plans, and we've never solved it.
Tim?
I also, at the workshop and through the public process, I felt there was a pretty strong position from the community and from the participants about what was important, to the community with infill stormwater. And by far, for the city, especially, with the lawsuits and all that, the stormwater is a huge issue. So I would hate to see. So I guess I'm not following what you're proposing, Brian.
Well, what I'm proposing, and I don't really think, Ken, that I was saying let's kick this down the road for 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm saying let's focus on nailing down our objectives and our targets and worrying about the scoring as the next phase. And when we get to that next phase and we can't really come up with good evaluation criteria for meeting the objectives, then we don't get rid of them. We don't get rid of the infill objective or the environmental objective, but we at least come up with a way to track it or measure our performance toward it.
I'm sorry, Brian, I would agree with that. Let's just deal with the objectives today and the targets today and take the next step Next up.
Jennifer?
So in a simpler way, I mean, you're kind of looking down the road, and I think this is what you're saying. Just because we have an objective or a target doesn't mean you have to have a scoring criteria for each and every single one of those.
Right.
So-
Yes, yeah. And that's just something that we need to think about when we get to that next phase and we develop our scoring process, is do we really want to,
I have a question.
do we really want to go that far with it? But
I know that this has been under development through the TAC subcommittee. Has this been to the CAC yet?
No.
I really think, I mean, in the past, just, you know, I have some comments on this and some things that I'm kind of concerned about on some of these items. And I think that in the past, what we've done on something as large as this is it's gone through all the committees and the board and has been a discussion item and then has come back. And I think that that's probably a good thing to, in my opinion, I know that this is an action item today, but I guess my suggestion at this point is it might be good to continue this through as a discussion item through all the committees and the board and allow us to have some extra time to look at this and take some of that input in and come back with a final recommendation. I guess that would be my thought on this today. Because I do still have some significant comments and I think environmental and stormwater is very important, but part of the issue is that we have to do all those things anyway. And I think that I just get concerned in looking at some of these things and try to make goals that are actually reachable for this region and not I mean, I want to have high aspirations, but on the other hand, I don't want to have items there that that we can never achieve or, you know, even in the fiscally constrained plan or the non-fiscally constrained plan, we'll never ever achieve because we're moving more towards a maintenance type instead of a lot of capital projects. And I get concerned about the infill because infill is one word, but there are other words for that issue as well. So I guess I think that
are they
there's-
bad words?
Huh?
Bad words?
Yes. But, you know, infill can be used in different ways, so. In any case, I mean, I think I'd like to have a discussion item about this today, but I guess what I would like to recommend is, and I agree with you, Brian, I do not want to have a
Long
scoring
application
for every
process.
single one of these, because I think that's part of the problem with our plan today. And that's why we're not seeing the projects that I think that are really important to this region rise to the top. So I guess that in discussion, I guess my recommendation, it'd be nice to get this through all of the committees and the board, to get also some other input for staff, and then come back and have some additional final action on it.
I guess if we don't put scoring to it, how do we expect staff, like Ken's pointing out, whenever all the agencies submit their projects, and we have the goals of the long-range transportation plan, how are they going to be able to rank projects without being able to calculate some way to measure?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't disagree with you, but that's what we'll have to deal with in the next phase. I mean, that's out of what we're dealing with today as an action item to approve the objectives and
Okay,
targets.
I just heard the county say that they agree with not scoring, and I disagree with that part.
Well, I agree with what Brian said, is that I'm not sure we have to, I mean, do you see how many targets we have on here? I mean, can you imagine? And that's part of the problem in the past, is that staff has had to score all this, which is a whole bunch of work. I think you still have to report on all of it, right? But, I mean, that scoring has gotten so watered down that none of the scores make any real difference, and then everything has a very similar score, and then your priorities for projects are not reflective of what's important for the region. And maybe we're off on the scoring thing, and we need to get away with that, and we can agree to disagree, but I think that that's part of the problem with how our projects came out last time, so.
I agree. I think that sometimes that actually is a detriment to the projects that need to rise to the top, because you have too much uniformity being applied that way, because everything has to have, so you get a point for this and you get a point for that, but is that really where it needs to go? Is that really the work that needs to be done?
Yeah, and there's a lot of contradiction in the scoring, too. You have, well, Ken, you mentioned it, you have a project that does really good on mobility, but it's really bad in some other areas. So you're pretty much, zeroing out
Any benefit.
benefits. Yeah. So it's not. I mean, we've been here doing this for many years, and it's never easy. And it'd be great if we could make progress on getting it right, or at least moving in that direction. But it's still going to be difficult to do. But I mean, for today, schedule-wise, can we afford to let this slip? Because my thought was, Jennifer, we had a region-wide workshop to develop the goals, and there were a lot of CAC members there for that. A lot of good representation from the region. But yeah, this objectives and targets process has pretty much just been TAC with a few workshops, and I don't know, we do have that community survey that was done by staff, and there's a lot of good results that came out of that said what the community really feels. And bringing this back to the CAC, I'm really not sure what we'd gain from that, and how much time we would lose, and whether we could afford it. I mean, we'll go to them obviously once we have an action item approved, but I don't know. Can this slip? Sure. And also comment on also about what your thought was with not including CAC in this process.
CAC was invited to the last TAC workshop at their request, but they did not end up attending.
Okay.
Last month, CAC saw the same thing you all saw last month, so where we were at this point, we had the objectives kind of roped out, but obviously there was a lot more work that needed to be done. So they've seen everything up until the last TAC workshop. In terms of the schedule, so our optimistic schedule was to have a recommendation today, and at CAC we knew that was optimistic. So get that done this month and to the board next month, and then do the scenarios after that. I think we're still on schedule for the scenarios. So then we're looking at, do we have two really big items in the same month, or do the scenarios get pushed back another month? And we're getting to the point where things are getting behind, which is probably to be expected given the situation with our staffing and everything. But we'll start getting into a little bit of danger if things start sliding anymore.
All right. Now, I feel, thanks for that reminder. I mean, they were invited to participate, and they've seen this stuff as we've gone along. So I feel pretty comfortable with keeping this as an action item today. Anybody else?
As an action item,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to a discussion item.
No, this is an action item on today's agenda.
I think we're going to, so we're approving objectives and targets today.
Right.
I think we're going to struggle with getting that through.
Well,
But
let's try.
It's not, so I look forward to hearing.
I think it's important to keep in mind that even though we're approving these, we're attempting to get a recommendation on these as, today. We're not touching the scoring criteria part of it. So that is going to be another discussion, and we could end up having these just as something that we monitor, kind of like the tourism one here. We have that as, at the workshop we recommended that we just have all of these different indicators just to monitor, but we're not actually going to make a scoring criteria from that. So the same could happen from these today, but I think for purposes of today, we just want to focus on, what the wording is and what the target is and how we want to measure it, and then the whole scoring thing is going to be another discussion. So we're not setting anything in stone here in terms of how projects are going to be scored. So I think it's important to keep that in mind for today.
And I think it would be better to have this finished before going into scenarios and not doing them.
So is PPACG prepared and ready to be measuring all of this? I mean, this is a whole lot of data.
So the data we have on here, this is all stuff, anything that I have under baseline is stuff we can measure. So that was the last couple of months is Ken and I spent a good amount of time together just figuring out what is possible to measure. And that's what we have on your sheet here is this is what we know that we can measure. So from there,
And more importantly, it can be duplicated in future years.
and it's going to be duplicated in future years. So, so towards the top of this sheet here, we have, let me just see.
A lot of vicinities.
So a lot of these
actually
things that we
providing
had-
this data too, so.
Yeah, so a lot of this
I get it.
stuff, the stuff that's in italicized here and underlined, that's what we decided is going to be the baseline year. So we did that for the ones above there. And so the ones down here, we just need to figure out. So we have the data for the baseline. We just need to figure out if that's the way we actually want to measure it.
A lot of this looks like a GIS exercise.
Yeah.
Some of it is, yeah. Just depending on what we're trying to measure.
I just want to emphasize what Kevin said, because he didn't emphasize it enough. He went through a really extensive process. I mean, you think this is sort of an unwieldy 5-page thing. His spreadsheet was epic. I mean, just comparing what we used in past plans, what data we have, and that's all he's been talking about is, can we measure that? We had it in the last plan and we can't measure it, so we were hyper-focused on making sure everything's going to be measurable.
So
I would like us to try to move forward and see where we can go with this. This one will be the most challenging one, but I think the other four, we're pretty much there on those. So,
Absolutely.
all right.
And I think that's important to know. The other four, I don't think there's any issues at all.
Right.
That we were all,
Right.
I don't want to say violent agreement, but we certainly were
Violent?
violent. I think we were adamant that it was all something we definitely could see.
Yeah.
Not only just being measurable, but scoreable.
Okay. So, I mean, we can just see how far we get today, and hopefully we'll get through it, but if not, we'll figure it out from there. But if we want to just start with the environment objective that we have up here, and just kind of work through that. So yeah, again, this is the baseline data that we know we have. This is how we know we can measure each of these components here. Yeah, I mean, we just have to decide if this is an objective we want to have, even if it's just for monitoring purposes. Again, we're going to have the whole scoring thing discussion later on, but even if we know we want to monitor this, we just need to decide how to measure it. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So these are again, below here are the recommendations that PPACG staff has on how to do that.
Any thoughts on that?
I guess I'm just struggling to figure out if a project by law has to go through the NEPA process, and NEPA provides analysis of alternatives in different courses of action, and the project incorporates one of those courses of action that goes through the analysis of alternatives. How do you evaluate one project over the other if they both meet that criteria? Should the criteria be we follow the NEPA analysis, which we have to do by law, or because the NEPA analysis also allows the opportunity to ignore critical habitat. It is a course of action. Not always advisable, but it is a course of action. So could we say follows the NEPA criteria and adopts one that does not or mitigates the impact to critical habitat? Because putting a number up there where we don't increase it or decrease it, I think goes against probably the other objectives that our organizations have of continued growth in the region. And I think that becomes problematic, I think, for us.
Well,
I'd like to just keep it back to the NEPA. That's the criteria.
Well, I kind of like their approach of, we've got these critical habitats, and if we're adding impact within these critical habitats, that's something that we should try to avoid. NEPA, like you're pointing out, all of our projects will address NEPA. So is that really something that we should score? Because the projects can address it. I would say we don't address NEPA.
Right. That's what I think those things do.
I don't think the first one doesn't. And the second bullet, staff isn't suggesting we do it. They suggest omitting it.
Right. I recommend omitting all three.
I'll just comment about NEPA. We're looking at projects that are 20 years out, and the ones that we're considering, I will lay you odds that not a single one of them has even started the NEPA process. Yes, they all must go through it, whatever that process might be as it's modified in the future, but they have to go through it, and whatever the option then it is selected out of the process is what gets built. We don't have control over that, and at this point, all we can do is what do we want for the region, and that's all this is setting. And if you can't develop the region without taking over habitat, well, who cares about habitat? We're interested in growth. If that's the regional goal, then that's what we state. If it's the environment and trails and the blue air and the big mountains, and if that's what draws people here, and part of that is the habitat, whatever that habitat is, water, land, then if that's the priority because we want the tourists, then we don't develop, we protect the habitat instead. So that becomes our value statement. And yes, those two might be, how do you have growth and protect habitat at the same time, if they're both goals. But
And NEPA does that. NEPA helps you go through that process of discovering.
well, but NEPA allows, if you look at all the development we've already done in critical habitat.
It is.
So we have valued growth over habitat in the past.
Absolutely agree with you. NEPA does allow that. Absolutely. NEPA is just a process. So it helps you get through decision making.
Right.
That's all it really does. It doesn't say this is the answer. It says this is the process you have to go through to determine what it is you want to do. That's all NEPA really does. I think NEPA helps. I think it already incorporates all these things into it.
I've got no problem with staff recommendation with the first and third bullets remaining. Doesn't touch NEPA process, doesn't really get into a NEPA analysis. It's just saying, hey, these are the areas we need to preserve. If you're going to be proposing a project in there, well, are you meeting the goals of the economic vitality? Also, the air quality is, that's something we have to do as the MPO.
So where are we? Striking the middle bullet?
That's the way I see it.
Can we get consensus on that, or?
I'm okay with striking the middle bullet, but I'd also like to strike the first bullet
Yep. Agree with that.
or reword it.
To what? Because I think preserving our critical habitats is important, and I think that's some of the feedback we got from the
Well, I
public.
think preserving, but that doesn't mean that you have to maintain or reduce the percentage of roads to do that. I'm okay with critical habitat, but I'm not sure that it means,
What about maintain or reduce the impact to
You
critical habitats?
don't think we're going to rip out 94 that goes to the critical habitat?
no. In
But it's a
fact, there's a
percentage.
huge, in fact, there's a huge, push to do improvements to 94. So, if there's critical habitats, there are other things you can do with the NEPA to address those. So, I just don't think that maintain or reduce the percentage of road and critical habitats is really a target that,
But isn't it a percentage of the overall roads, not just a percentage in the critical?
It's the overall. So up here we have the way it's
Maybe
measured
that's,
is,
would that give you a better,
so we have,
like, let's say we have 20%, well, we have what, 21.5% in critical habitats. In
Yeah.
2040, we still have 21.5%. Even though we've built our transportation system, added mileage, it's still at least 21.5%.
And are
Sometimes
we
when you're
singling out
Because
roads?
you're still being able to build in critical habitat. It's just maintaining that percentage.
Well, and sometimes when you're building a large project, there's nothing you can do to stop that damage to the habitat, but then you have the ability to mitigate in a different area or to protect the same type of process somewhere else through NEPA. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same footprint either.
Absolutely. NEPA doesn't require you necessarily to protect that specific square inch of land. It means you have to mitigate it somewhere
Right.
else, which goes back to my point of it's already addressed in NEPA.
Right.
You know, you don't just get to go through and just start ripping stuff out. You have to mitigate
Right.
under your analysis of alternatives.
Maybe it's a clarification of percentage of the overall roadway system and not just, because I could see where there'd be concern with reduced percentage of roads in critical habitats. It should maintain percentage of roads, same percentage of critical habitat roads based on the overall transportation system.
I think that might be, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if that's how it's already stated. We have the
Well, I'm
total.
looking at the target, go to the target. And it says, maintain or reduce a percentage of roads in critical habitats. So let's say we have 21.5% roads in critical habitat. Are you saying that you can't build, is your concern you can't build any more in that critical habitat because you're already at 21.5%?
I guess my concern is that we're saying that our only target has to do maintaining or reducing the percentage of roads in those critical habitats. That's the only target. I mean, a lot of our improvements to PPACG are not just roads. I mean, and why are we putting ourselves in a box of having to do that when, you know, it's not just maintaining or reducing. It could be, you know, maybe it's just maintaining that percentage of critical habitats within the region. I don't know, but I mean, I just think that that's kind of like what you do with stormwater. You have to address this stuff so that you're essentially making no significant impacts or a Cat X. I mean, we already are having to do all these things. Maybe the point is that making sure of all of our projects are meeting NEPA requirements. And maybe it's as simple as that, because essentially air quality is the same thing.
So how do you improve or mitigate impacts to critical habitat, stormwater runoff, quantity, and air quality?
How do you what?
How would you, what suggestion do you have to improve or mitigate impacts to critical habitat, stormwater runoff, quantity, and air quality? Because those are the objectives that we're addressing.
You follow NEPA.
Oh.
So what would your proposed target be? Because right now, NEPA is required to apply to every project, so it's not a target of, well, we want to improve from 50% of projects meeting NEPA requirements to 75% of projects meeting NEPA requirements, because right now, 100% meet NEPA requirements.
Right.
I think one thing could be to, you know, instead of doing, you know, some of these small mitigation projects all over with each of these projects, is to maybe try and consolidate that. One of those things that we're doing is the wetland bank that we're doing.
Your
So,
20-acre
I
wetland.
mean, from an environmental standpoint, that's a better product than doing some of these small, you know, mitigations. So maybe a goal is to try to do some of these things for improvements. I mean, there are goals and projects that can accomplish that. And
How
so,
about an increase in habitat area, not necessarily what you're taking away? Because if you build something across it and you take half an acre, you put an acre back in somewhere else. I don't know what the ratio is in and I know that it depends on what type of project it is and how much land you've disturbed and so forth and so on, but how about increasing? A measurement would be to protect and increase those critical habitat areas and maintain, increase, versus worrying about the road. What are we measuring? The road is the habitat is a result of smart thinking about how we're putting things together.
But how do you put that into a project, into a long-range plan? Saying, hey, we're going, we're disturbing half
Again,
an
this
acre.
isn't necessarily something you have to have as a scoring criteria. This is just something we need to be able to measure, to be able to report out on.
Okay.
This isn't, all of these pieces are not necessarily something you
For
have to
scoring.
score on.
Is there a way to calculate how much critical habitat we have?
Yes,
Yeah.
So, so we have that.
we have that identified.
So maybe that's what we want to, I agree with you, maybe that's what we want to focus on, is the amount of critical
Yeah.
habitat we have, not
Maintain
where we put our
or
roads.
Maintain
Increase.
or increase that critical habitat.
Yeah.
And
Does
it doesn't
this
matter what you
project do
build.
that's measurable?
And can I add, I mean, shouldn't we be more concerned with all projects and not just roads? I mean, there's, we have pedestrian improvements, we have
Park and
bike
ride.
trails, bike lanes, whatever, shoulders.
Planning
Silly
study.
transit projects.
What's that?
A planning study,
Yes.
a new bus or two.
Well, no, I mean, it just seems like roads, I mean, there's more impact than just roads. I mean, a lot of projects have impacts, and not just roadways, so. But then we can measure that, right? I mean, we have a location of where the project is going to be, and you have all of the critical habitats mapped. So it's basically just an overlay, right? If that project falls in a critical habitat, then there's an impact, right?
Yeah, we
So
wouldn't
it's
be able to
something.
do that. We wouldn't be able, if we were going to take everything into account, we wouldn't have any sort of baseline data on what we currently have overall. We know our baseline data for the amount of roads,
Yeah.
but for sidewalks and park and rides and all that type of stuff, we just don't have the data for a baseline, but we can certainly do it applied to each individual project if that were the case.
Yeah, we've got the baseline data, that you saw when you were here the last time, of where the critical habitat is, and the geography, and the square miles or square acres, whatever you want to measure. Not knowing how many driveways and sidewalks and parking lots or anything else that we have, the way we would measure the change would be, how does the critical habitat area change, regardless of what you're putting into it. If it's transportation related, whether it's a road, a trail, or whatever, if it's consuming critical habitat, then that we would know and be able to say, okay, critical habitat was reduced by 1,000 square feet, 1,000 acres, or whatever it might be. And we wouldn't necessarily need to know how many square miles of sidewalks we currently have, or trails, or something like that. But
So could a target be like maintain or reduce percentage or number of projects impacting critical habitats? I mean, does that get us any closer to leave it in and not strike it out?
I'd almost rather go with acreage, though, but
What's that?
I think I like that
acreage.
a little bit. Yeah, because I think, I think you made an astute point that there are, when a project goes through and NEPA process is followed, a decision is made to go ahead and sacrifice the critical habitat in the name of the project, right, sometimes. So I do like the idea that maybe you could encourage, when you go through the NEPA process, to accept the alternative that actually mitigates and provides for continued critical habitat. And for that, you'd have to know how much critical habitat we currently have, and does this project support continuing on that?
Does it add to it? Does it subtract from it?
Right.
That's measurable.
Yeah.
It's measurable, because you have to know how much total critical habitat we have, which we say we can measure.
Which we have. We know
Right,
that.
which we have,
We know
but it
that's
doesn't
a known
direct that
entity.
you can't put and this, I'm about to use the wrong, inaccurate verbiage. It encourages, when you go through the process, to mitigate and to do something for the critical habitat, as opposed to just choosing the alternative to ignore it and proceed on.
Okay, I've got a question for you that
Yeah, I like that.
I
when,
like that
when,
too.
Maintain or mitigate, there you go.
especially when we go to CAC, but even for myself, when we say mitigate, I'm going to build a road and it's going to take a mile of habitat. Now, when you say mitigate, does that mean I have to replace another mile, an equal square footage?
Not always, I
No.
mean,
Or
for
do I
example,
mitigate it operationally or in some other way?
so maybe maybe on the I-25 widening, you're adding another I'll just take this as an example, just thinking out loud. You have 4 lanes today. We add 6 lanes. Say we're going to 6 lanes. That affects the distance that, those animals are crossing, but the mitigation may be that they may be doing some fencing and
Wildlife
deer
crossing.
crossings and other things. So, while they may take some of that percentage of land, they might make it better and increase the safety of the traveling public, but also
And
the
for the
safety of the
animals.
wildlife
Yeah.
by enhancing some of those other alternatives. So it may actually increase not the fatality
Viability.
rate, it may
The viability of
increase
the area.
that. And so even though you may be taking away acreage, you could be actually
Sa-
providing
Saving
acreage
lives
benefit.
over what's getting killed right now.
Right.
Saving lives not only of people, but also of the animals. So, the CDOT did a great project on the south side of I-25 and did some wildlife fencing.
It's pretty amazing, the results on that project as well.
And so, you have an impact there, and you might have taken some acreage.
But it's a positive outcome.
So,
And that's why I have a problem with this, is that doesn't always, the percentage or the acres doesn't always show
Right.
how you have maybe done some
Right.
enhancements.
So
for
I think
mitigation.
your
That's why I like
verbiage is
your
good, maintain
mitigation.
and mitigate.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
I'll
like,
agree with that.
I
So
like,
say that again. It's,
Maintain or mitigate the percentage of roads and critical habitats.
well, let's take out roads too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
PPACG maintain and/or mitigate the acreage of critical habitats.
just leave it at that.
But I want to exclude trails, because like your Fontaine Trail, that probably goes through critical habitat, right? Just like our Pikes Peak Greenway probably does. So if we're doing, like if you're enhancing a trail, you're gonna get dinged for your trail projects.
well, now, some of the critical habitat is plants, and if you're running out there through the critical plant habitat and you're building a trail, whether you just
Right.
plow it and make it dirt, or whether you
But
pave it,
your NEPA won't
you've
let you
wiped
do
out
that.
so many
Most
square
of those
feet.
NEPAs are CADXs,
Yeah,
so
they are.
you're showing that you have no significant impact.
You can do a K-Tex on it with a Ponzi. That's really what.
We have gone from the past where those 3 items, bullets there, were separate goals with a separate measurable scoring criteria. We didn't really have objectives and performance targets for them in the past, other than maintain or improve. And now we're wrapping them up under one objective, under a goal of improve our global competitiveness, is where the federal phraseology is, and we've translated that into economic vitality. So is environment an objective to increase or maintain our economic vitality? I think it is, from everything you're reading about tourists coming here and people wanting to come here and work because of our environmental quality. Now, what's the best way of phrasing it to reflect that?
Do you think that maintain and/or mitigate the acreage is not meeting that?
I want to mitigate the acreage. It doesn't quite flow correctly, but
Well, mitigate
Well, when you're looking at NEPA, first of all, I mean, I always forget, you want to avoid, right? Then you-
Maintain or mitigate the impact,
Yeah.
right, of, or to critical habitats.
So,
Sorry, I didn't
Mitigate the
mean to
impacts
interrupt you.
to the acreage.
maintain acreage of critical habitats and,
I like the way-
or mitigate impacts to it?
I like the way he's got it
I don't
there.
think you're going to mitigate the acreage, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I like the way he's got it now. Maintain or mitigate the impact to critical habitats.
Nice job, Kevin.
Brilliant.
And you could actually score that if you wanted to, because it would be spelled out in the application what the plan is, and if you're doing it, then you get points. If you're not doing it, then you get no points.
That's for a later discussion, but for
Right,
today.
I'm just saying, it's a possibility.
Yeah, yeah,
because
absolutely,
I
yeah.
know that that's one of the things that,
Should be on the back of our mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way it was done in the past.
Doesn't
I think,
necessarily
yeah.
mean you have to use it as a criteria to score, but you could if you wanted to.
Can we say the impact of transportation projects, like the impact of what? Because we said it was not just roads, so the impact of what?
So as you look back at the original title of the goal, it says, I apologize, improve competitiveness of regional economy and residents' quality of life through strategic transportation investments and integrated transportation technology. So I think, so that had to do with investments and technology would be what we'd be, the measure would be for, and it goes all the way back to what the goal is. So it's not just looking at capital improvements to roads or parking rides or whatever else, it's also looking at technology. I think that's, it gives a
Technology
broad, it gives a,
doesn't necessarily-
which may not be subject to NEPA, but at least it's all inclusive of things we're wanting to look at under the goal.
So you're suggesting be the impact to transportation investments and technology,
I'd just leave it as that.
or just leave
It
it there?
rolls
I
up
would
Because
leave it
it's
as
up
that
above.
because the goal
It's
is
relating
about-
back to the.
It's already in the top.
Yeah, it's already
It rolls up.
a top line.
Yeah. So, again, I'm going to go back to trail project. How would a trail project mitigate? It's just, we got
A
to,
trail project would have no significant impact because they'd be done under a Cat X.
okay.
Likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we can say, let's do it this way and then eliminate certain types of
Modes.
projects. I think it's got to be all in.
Okay.
But even at that, when you're going through and you're putting together a trail project, if you know you're running across an area where you have plant life that is critical to the area, you can always mitigate it. I mean, it's possible. It's going to cost a little bit more, but in the end, you protect something, right, that would have been gone.
Just like wetlands, if you have
Yeah.
a trail project and
Yeah.
it's a wetland, you're
Yeah.
gonna,
Yeah, you're going to mitigate it. You have to.
Yeah,
so you're gonna be doing it anyway.
Right.
so you'll know that.
Okay.
So we good on this one? Okay.
What about the air quality aspect?
Well, so another question, Kevin, going up to the baseline data, does that bullet under critical habitats need to be kind of relooked at, since we're not just focusing on roads? I mean, do we need more, a different language for that bullet under baseline data?
Yeah, I think we could look at that. I guess, I wasn't aware, but I guess we have the data on how many critical habitats exist and how many acres.
We've got a shapefile that says the acreage of
Okay.
stuff.
So that would certainly be something we would need to
If the
know.
target is to,
Yeah.
to reduce the impacts, tell me how many impacts we have right now.
Right.
I mean, we're not measuring the acreage of the habitats. Now we're measuring impacts, or we're mitigating impacts. And I don't have an inventory of how many impacts we're doing right now.
But we do know how much critical habitat we have.
Well, I mean, through each project, you would, I mean, you start with your baseline of how much acreage, right? Each project, you would have, if you're impacting an acreage, right? And then how you're mitigating that. Does that make sense?
Do we have that?
So a reporting item that we would have to do on all of our projects would be how much we're impacting and what
What
we're
the
doing to
mitigation
address
is.
that.
Yeah.
And at
agree.
some point in time, you have to know that.
Yeah, but in all honesty now, if we're looking at a project 20 years out in the future, how much have you thought about, as you're filling out this application, how much have you thought about what you're going to impact and
But isn't that what this is supposed to do? It's supposed to make us think about that when we are.
well, if that's what we're setting ourselves up for, then I
What
agree,
I'm
but.
thinking about is whatever comes out in NEPA, I'm gonna have to follow.
Yeah.
And I'm also looking at, does that one, is it in a critical habitat, and how much does that cost? Because that goes into
Your
cost
estimate.
estimates for these projects. So, from my standpoint, Ken, yeah, I am looking at
Okay.
that. I mean, to the best of my knowledge,
Right.
because we have similar shape files as you do.
Yeah.
And so I know, heck, I'm in the Falcon area, and there's wetlands all over the place, so I know that I'm gonna have to mitigate that, and so I'm gonna be putting that cost into my
Yeah.
project.
And anytime you have to do that type of mitigation, it costs more,
Yeah.
a lot more.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we're looking at that and saying, does my little trail, it's not gonna have a lot of probably impacts, so when we look at the scope of that and the costs associated with that, we understand that. So when you're looking at I-25 and widening from 4 to 6 lanes, that's gonna have a pretty significant environmental impact. You're rolling that into that cost.
Yeah, so that's fine, as long as, again, not talking about scoring, but realizing that what we're saying here is going to impact scoring, but as long as that's part of your thought process already, then without creating a lot of extra workload,
Yep.
then that's something that could be addressed. So that
I think
works.
so.
And truthfully, in 20 years, your wetlands may have moved, and now your project's right in the middle of wetlands. So even after we go through the whole process of planning out a project.
20 years
that
from
could
now, it
change.
might be a glacier, or maybe it's going to be a desert.
Right. Anything can happen, right? If you have the world's largest glacier with a big crack in it, right in your area now.
Okay.
So do we want to try to figure out how to reword this critical habitat here then?
I think the region has how many acres of critical habitat?
So, and just leave it at that?
Yeah, as of whatever, pick whatever date your
Yeah, we'll see what our data,
data is.
yeah,
Your last data collection was.
okay.
That's a lot easier to measure, I would think, for PKCG staff too.
So,
They're going to strike the second bullet.
And the third.
yeah, strike this one as well, I think.
You guys okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then this is the target here. Is that, everyone agree with that?
And replace the first 2 bullets with that.
Yes, sir.
Oh, of these ones you're talking about?
No, keep the third bullet. At least I'll argue for keeping.
There you go.
Delete that.
With our history of non-attainment, we'll still be maintenance area when this plan is approved. And with the issues with the power plant and other air quality issues, I would not want to stand up and say, we don't care about air quality, let's delete it.
Till next time.
Nice.
Just kidding.
Just put it out later.
I get to look.
All right. Okay, so then, second part here is infill. This is kind of,
Are we doing tourism and economy?
so tourism and economy, at the workshop, we kind of decided to use all of these things on the list here as kind of indicators, but not actually try to establish a target for this, just because it's very difficult to directly relate a transportation project with economic development. So we decided to kind of monitor these indicators for tourism and the economy, but not really establish a target. Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Tim, at all? Or?
I wasn't there, so I can't really.
My feeling is that this is probably the most direct measure of our economic vitality, whether you use sales tax or GDP or GRP or any of these other economic measures. But what I don't know is how, if we build any one project or we build all 200 projects that we identify for the next 20 years, how they will change. If everything else in the world remained the same, what would widening I-25 do? What would putting in a trail do? Is it going to raise the GDP by 1,000 or 1,000,000? Is it going to raise sales tax revenues, such and such? I don't think anybody's got the time to figure that or the expertise amongst us here.
Crystal ball.
So
We did feel
it becomes something that we can monitor, and every year we can show, oh, hey, look, we've got a bubble going, we got a bust going, the boomer bust cycle, and I would hesitate to make any kind of a correlation or causation between that and the transportation system.
So then why have the objective?
Federally, we're supposed to address this, specifically tourism. So this is kind of our way of addressing that.
It's a planning factor, not a performance target.
Okay.
We also want to know how the tourists felt while they were here, and how much merchandise they're bringing home, and how many people are coming because of their reviews.
It's all easily trackable.
You sounded really convincing on this. You really put some thought into this.
Is that what we have a tourism office for? Have you contacted them?
I think Ken nailed it. We didn't want to get into a causation, or the if we build it, they will come. Just trying to get the if-then was too hard.
Yeah, and as a planning factor, it's just something that we have to address, but it's up to us how to address it. Now, in this particular planning factor, we've created a goal for economic vitality. Everybody's interested in jobs, so that corresponds with, the federal planning factor for global competitiveness. It has never risen to a goal in the past, even though it's always, for a long time, has been a planning factor. So now we've got it as a goal. So this is one way of measuring it that might only be a monitoring and the reporting thing that we do. Or, as you say, Anton, if we even put it in here, is that too much of a link that people are going to interpret it as causation? But the other, saying something about the environment, it's a very indirect, for our economy where tourism is as high as it is, maybe it's an important, even though it's an indirect transportation-related issue. But obviously, if whatever we do to damage the environment that draws tourists, tourism is one of our big industries. Is it the only measure of economic vitality? Whatever the third box over there that.
Is that all right with
I
you?
don't really have an answer, so.
Okay. So, yeah, let's move over to infill here. So we just, at the TAC workshop, there was some discussion. I guess we didn't have a full consensus on it, but there was some discussion on how do we want to measure infill and what are we trying to accomplish. And several people mentioned achieving cost effectiveness through infill. I think the county might have had some different thoughts on that one, but that was kind of what some people mentioned at the workshop. And then below here we have 4 bullets on possible ways to measure this objective. Attachment number 3 in your packet has a map of our region, and so bullet point number 2, the ratio of dollars invested in the urbanized area.
Oh, yeah,
That map kind of shows the difference between the MPO boundary and the urbanized area and then the census designated area. So that's something that we could possibly use. So
It's not straightforward.
So I had a few thoughts on this, and, you know, I think some of the discussion at the workshop, what we were getting at was cost effectiveness and efficiencies can be impacted by infill. I'm not sure and it wasn't full consensus among everybody that was there, but there was some head nodding that there are some efficiencies that can be gained by focusing on existing infrastructure. Does that jive with what I emailed you out earlier today?
I think the question that I had specifically was, because I punted on this one at the workshop, so if I can get some guidance, some understanding, was where has the board decided that we wanted to incentivize infill? Or what we're really trying to do is maximize efficiencies or investments on existing infrastructure. I mean, is that what we're really trying to do? Is it infill? Because infill is infill versus activity centers. You got to define them and all that. But if you sit and try to get an efficiency, that's what we're really after, regardless of where that efficiency is located. I think that's what we're really after, isn't it?
Yeah. And
Versus infill versus activity centers. Because do we care if something's going to be built adjoining Falcon, or adjoining somewhere out in the somewhere closer to Colorado Springs? I don't think we care. I think we care about are we being efficient with what we're doing.
Yep.
I think infill and action centers have activity centers has a connotation of county versus city, and that's not the intent. The intent is to be efficient with the resources and to improve competitiveness, which is the original goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think
that's kind of where I was trying to get to and
Yeah.
bring my thoughts together on.
Right.
I'm not sure if in the past the objective of the board was to use infill to achieve cost effectiveness, but they did use the exact word of infill. So in the 2035 plan, they said, use transportation investments to incentivize infill and redevelopment of existing communities. And they measured that by decrease the number of lane miles per person and land consumption per capita by X% over the baseline level. And then in 2040, they had the same exact measurement for infill as well, but they didn't specify the term cost effectiveness. So I'm not sure what they were getting at with that, but that's how they measured it.
So those are previous plans and not this plan. So this plan can be looked at again. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yeah. That's just what was done in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would like to, going back to what you said when we were working with the critical habitat target. For objective 3, I would like to just call that infill, rather than incentivize infill by focusing investments on existing infrastructure, because a lot of that is in the goal definition. It's strategic transportation investments. That's kind of what we're looking at. So I think trying to simplify the name of objective 3, just call it infill.
Okay.
I just throwing that out. And going back to the 2040 plan, the board adopted these goals and performance measures in 2014, and yet they had number of lane miles per capita and number of projects in urban and urbanizing area. And, a couple of these kind of reappeared at our workshop. The VMT per capita and daily vehicle hours traveled per capita, I'm not really sure. That's really going to tell us what we want to know. I don't know.
That was my question, too.
Yeah. So, and ratio of dollars invested in urbanized area.
How How do you know that?
Well, that would be a PPACG staff analysis of, the cost of projects and where they're located. Are they in the
Yeah, that'd be kind of a
urbanized area?
GIS exercise a little bit there.
I mean, that could be done, but I would not mind having what we had in the 2040 plan, which was number of projects, and it's kind of just kind of like the critical habitat exercise. You have the number of projects in critical habitat, number of projects in the urban area, or the urbanizing area, something like that.
There's plenty of urban area in the county still, too.
Mm-hmm. Crickets?
I think I'd have to agree with you, Brian. That- Because it doesn't exclude any agency or entity, and there are urban areas in the county. Everybody has an urban area, so I actually agree that approach. And we've used it in the past, and we've scored it.
So those two, lane miles per capita and number of projects in census-designated urbanized area. Okay. What do you guys think? Come on, we're so close. And then we have 4 more goals to deal with, objectives on.
And that's always changing.
I'll ask a clarification, Brian.
Uh-huh.
So is the incorporated area.
Is it the census-designated urbanized area, or is it
Then we're taking
the pink area that's shown on this map, which was the 2040 projected urban area? Census-designated is based on the 2010 census. Do we want to recognize, based on our growth forecast, that we're going to expand, which is what the pink area shows, and this is what it'll look like in 2040? Now,
That would make sense, right?
That's what we're forecasting
Yeah.
growth to be, based on the transportation system identified in the 2040
Here.
plan, or based on the 2035, whichever iteration, the way that works. So I would recognize that we recognize the growth that we're planning for, rather than saying what existed in 2010.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Makes more sense.
So you're suggesting that smooth urban boundaries based upon 2040 TAZ population density?
Yeah. Recognizing that that'll be slightly different when we go through the new forecast.
So state what it was in the last plan.
So 2040, so it was the number of projects in the urban and urbanizing area through 2040.
And number of lane miles per capita.
Yeah, that would as well, yeah.
If I remember correctly, we added urbanizing just to kind of help facilitate with you guys, rather than sticking with urban.
Can we at least agree to get rid of the bottom 2 bullets?
I'm not sure what those are really worth anyway.
Yeah.
What is the proposed ratio of dollars invested in urbanizing or 2040
sorry.
area?
So that second one is just another one that we developed at one of our workshops.
Okay.
So we're just saying, let's go with
Number of projects.
number of projects in urban and urbanizing area. Through 2045.
Lost Aaron.
wouldn't it be number of projects in urbanizing area? I mean, isn't that essentially what we agreed
Same thing,
to last
yeah.
time?
Yeah.
Number of
So just
projects
only-
in urbanizing area based on 2040 TAZ population density?
2045 TZ.
Or, I'm sorry, 2045, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Want to do based on?
Or defined by, or whatever.
That-
Yeah, based on is good. Although based on.
Oh, yep.
I feel better about that, but I guess we're gonna have a further discussion when we come to scoring.
So these the same two that were in the last plan?
I think so, yeah.
9 miles per capita?
I actually found the board packet from February 12th, 2014, where they were approved. And then we could get rid of that paragraph above it, right?
I was going to ask not to.
Oh, for the objective?
It says the TAC workshop agreed we are trying to achieve
Oh, this one.
cost effectiveness through infill. I would just take out the cost. I'd say put your period after effectiveness and delete the rest of that.
Okay.
Because I mean, it's,
I'd get rid of TAC, I'd get rid of workshop, because at this point, it's the full TAC.
yes, sir.
Okay. And then,
I can define infill.
It's the opposite of sprawl.
Well,
Take
in
a smart
our
aleck.
scenarios, we are defining it as new development occurs in areas that already have some development. So the way we've been explaining it to people is that, you know, Falcon could get a little bit more dense, or Monument, or even Green Mountain Falls. So it's just areas that already have development and continue to grow. That's our, for the public definition.
Thank you.
and then next to objective 3, just call that infill.
Okay, so you just want to have infill here, not a,
Yeah. Everybody else okay with that? Since a lot of that is kind of shown in the goal definition. I think that was the gist of it, was to make our transportation investments
do we want to mention
Or
cost
strategic.
effectiveness in the objective? Instead of what we have up there, since we mentioned that was kind of the,
I think that's what you can talk about instead of saying infill. It was incentivize cost effectiveness
incentivize cost effectiveness.
by focusing on investments on existing infrastructure.
Well, I really like infill, kept in there somehow.
Yeah.
Because infill was a kind of a big, it scored pretty well with the public survey. I mean, there was a lot of interest in infill and kind of focusing on already built areas.
Wasn't the last format, or the what am I trying to think, the direction that we chose was some type of a hybrid of the infill model too, right? From the scenario planning, was it not?
The last time?
Yeah, when we did the look, we did all those little sticky notes
was
and,
that the pizza we did?
Little bit between infill and existing,
right.
which is mostly sprawl, but I think the other one was a conservation
Yeah.
scenario where
Yeah.
we protected the habitat and prevented growth in it and shoved everybody around it somewhere. And
I mean, I think our goal here is to not create more sprawl, but to make sure that we're looking at that and trying to invest our infrastructure, whatever that is, in those centers. And I guess my problem with this is that it's not only in, you know, that urbanizing area. I mean, there are locations outside of that, some of those that you can do some additional improvements to some of those existing facilities that may not be in that urbanized, that specific area. So, I mean, I guess that's where I have some troubles. You know, we have existing infrastructure. Our goal here is to, I think, at this point, to kind of maintain that existing infrastructure, make that better. And some of those facilities are, I mean, good example, Highway 94, as it goes out to Schriever Air Force Base. That is not in your projected urban area, but that's an important, very important location in our region. So that's where I kind of have some problems with this infill thing, is that, I mean, and defining infill and looking at it only in those urban areas. I mean, if we didn't have Schriever Air Force Base, would that have an impact to our economy? Hell yeah. So, and that's where I really have some concerns over this objective and how it's worded.
Well, could you expand the list of targets? You know, so kind of take that into account.
That's what I'm struggling with here and how to get
Well,
that
kind of
worded.
getting what you said, Jennifer, if you said we're going to incentivize investments on existing infrastructure, it wouldn't matter whether you were talking about 94 way out east or whether you were talking I-25 in the middle of downtown. They're existing infrastructure as compared to building a new, brand-new Powers Boulevard extension from Highway 83 to I-25, which doesn't exist, even though it's in the urban area. So, again, getting back to your cost-effectiveness thing on existing, that's the type of priority that would set up. We want to maintain or improve existing infrastructure before we build something new.
This also talks about it being in that urbanizing area. And I mean, for example, that Highway 94, I mean, I think that's an important area in our region. Now, that's a great example of, it's not in the urbanizing area, but that's an important thing.
So instead of just using the urbanizing area, why don't you use the MPO boundary?
I'm okay with that. I'm not sure others would be.
Because the urbanizing area is going to get the money anyway when everything is said and done, from a scoring perspective, from a need perspective. Just because you set this as your boundary doesn't mean that this isn't where it's going to happen, as we know. Most of the money will go here, not here. And then that solves that problem of not being in the urbanizing area. Because there are needs outside of the urbanizing area. And that would make it a priority for us to spend the money there. And that's not what is being looked at from our perspective. We're looking at money in that area. So if you tell us that that's not your priority area, then that could jeopardize what you have coming down the road.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's get somewhere and then let the board argue the details. I mean, I think we're not going to solve this now, and I really don't want to delay this. We've come too far. So somebody propose some language that we can be somewhat comfortable with, and then it'll be a discussion for our board representatives at the next board meeting. I mean, the targets, I think we're pretty okay with those, right? It's just you're having agita over, that's Italian heartburn, in case anybody doesn't know.
I'm not Italian. Thanks for explaining that.
Sure.
I think we're going to
Over-
have to agree to disagree on this one.
Yeah. All right.
Even if you change it to focus investments on existing infrastructure? Again, this is for objective purposes only.
I'm okay with that, but
Say it again. Say that again.
Focus investments on existing infrastructure?
And remove the word infill, you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
So get rid of incentivize infill by, you just say focus for the phraseology for objective 3.
Yeah, I would be
In the
okay with
box
that.
up above, for the title for objective 3.
Mhm.
And then that would get your guys supporting the targets, if we did that.
I think it's reasonable to measure the projects in the urbanizing area, and I guess we're gonna have to, as we go along, I mean, the big thing is gonna be the scoring, right? And we'll have to address that later.
Another step.
I agree with that.
Good. So we'll just,
We obviously can't develop a scoring criteria for every bullet that we've listed on that document.
Right.
So I'm going to throw something out there. And
Tread carefully, Tim.
You got the
And
county
this
doing a
is-
north-south nod. Look at the law.
this is
Sold
just
the card.
This is just a thought. Feel free to shoot it down. But focus investments on existing infrastructure that supports infill development and major employment. Would that cover? Because it is an economic vitality. So if you threw major
I don't think
employment.
it's just major employment activity centers, though. I think that there are some.
Recreation.
We have really wrestled on how to define a major activity center, or any kind of an activity center, whatever size you want.
And I thought at either the first workshop or just 2 weeks ago, I thought we kind of agreed to get rid of activity centers because it was just so hard to define.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Did I dream that, or?
That's
was
correct, yeah.
Okay.
No, we want to be able to define it.
Yeah.
We want to be,
Right.
I want to be able to define
Yeah.
it,
Yeah,
but I just don't know how to get
right,
there.
right. I agree.
I think infill is important to be part of the description.
we can certainly have it as a title. So like for environment, we have objective 1, environment, and then underneath that we have what we're trying to accomplish. We can do kind of the same here.
That's a good idea.
I think Brandon and I need something that says infill in it.
That would be nice, yeah.
Why?
Because that's a major strategic priority for the city and the mayor's office, and it's one of our goals. In fact, even some of the board members on the PPACG board, we've had them spearhead the infill.
Yeah, Andy Pico, the chair, and Joe Gabler kind of co-chaired our infill and redevelopment steering committee. So if the objective said infill, and then underneath it,
So just
what is
see
there,
that looks like.
would that be good?
I hate that worse than what it was.
So you like this less, you're saying?
Than what it was like 3 times ago, where we had infill in the thing.
In the description? So,
So then Control Z it 3 times.
what if we said promote cost effectiveness through infill? Since that's what we're kind of getting at, cost effectiveness.
So do you define infill as existing infrastructure?
My thought would be the way these measurements would help define what infill is. We're measuring it by lane miles per capita, and projects in the urbanizing area. That would be how you define the infill. It's how you're measuring it. The way you're measuring it is basically how you're defining it.
Yeah.
I like it,
I think,
because it doesn't limit us.
what about number of infill projects in urbanizing area?
If you use the urbanizing area, you still cut yourself out on 94.
No, I mean, you're just measuring the
Oh,
urban,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you're just measuring.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point, is
Yeah.
those projects in the urbanizing area are infill.
Could we change the word "in"? Number of projects supporting the urbanizing
That's
area.
a great idea.
That allows you to get the connectors that brings your urbanizing areas together. That takes care of the 94.
And if we're only building regional projects, then every project would support the
Right.
urbanizing area.
Correct.
What we should be doing
That's what we
anyway.
should be doing anyway. Right? It's like you have council members who are looking for the word infill. We have PPACG board members who are also adamant that we are business and growth friendly. So so there needs to be a way that we can put both of these entities supporting that, being friendly to continued economic growth, which is what the goal is, right? So how can we, find common ground for that, as opposed to doing one versus the other?
So what did you say? Number of infill projects in urbanizing area?
Supporting
Supporting.
urbanizing areas.
And leave the objective titled the way it is there, without infill in the objective?
You need it to have, you need to have infill in there somewhere, right?
We do.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, didn't you say for the second bullet, number of infill projects supporting urbanized area?
I think my
Did you say
thought
that?
got changed by how we did the sporting.
That-
Maybe you have a measurement of number of infill projects.
But a road's not really, like an infill project would be like, I built a new apartment building here on a vacant lot. Like, you don't really think of a road as being an infill project, so I'm not sure if that quite works.
Build a road to support that infill project.
I mean,
Who keeps track of
a
the
maintenance
land use?
project on
Right.
a roadway or a new sidewalk within an infill area is an infill project, right? So it's,
Infrastructure to support
Mhm.
infill.
Could we change, so, we say up there at the very top, objective, focused, oh my God, I'm going to dork this up, but no bad ideas yet, right? Focus infill investments, or focus investments on existing focus infill investments on existing infrastructure. Now, I appreciate you got to get the word infill in there. I get that.
What about focus investments on infill and existing infrastructure? Maybe you have them both in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
You need that,
Yeah.
we get it, you need to have that in there.
What
Yes.
about both in there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Infill and.
Good one, Jennifer.
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks for
Infill.
coming
No,
this
no, no,
one.
no, 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 don't delete that.
No, yeah.
Just put it
On
on
infill.
infill and existing infrastructure.
That way it accomplishes both things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it doesn't pit us against, it says and.
Right.
Yeah.
That helps, that's going to help the board vote, do the north-south nod no matter where they sit.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Nice job.
Ta-da. You can take a bow.
So we're good with the objective, the wording for that, and the
I'm
targets?
happy.
Good, okay. All right. Now,
Teamwork.
objective 4, right? Is that still in here? Revenue and cost trends?
Victoria was going to give some detail on that, and I think she,
Okay.
Kim, was that what she sent you and I? Did you have a chance to go back and look at her note from 2 weeks ago? She had that attachment.
What
Did that meet the need of what we were looking for there?
Yeah, what she presented was, you know, when I looked through it rapidly, was some charts that showed costs are going up, revenues are going down based on the gas tax. We've actually got the entire chapter in the plan that has got similar type statistics
Okay.
and stuff, and so that's recognized. I don't know, I mean, that's part of what we develop, because our plan has to be fiscally constrained. And so that's what defines how much revenue we're going to have in the future and how many projects we can select. So I'm not sure how it fits here under economic vitality.
And since you have a whole chapter, why do you need it there? I was going to ask that question.
Because I think, again, not something that, I mean, we're going to forecast revenue. That's in this other chapter. Cost and inflation is also addressed in there. Yeah, so it's
And you almost
duplicate.
need to do with number 4 like you did with number 2.
To me, this is kind of duplicated here.
You know, there are things that you have to track that you're tracking anyway. It's almost like that objective number 4. I mean, and I guess the question is, do you want to keep it? But, I mean, if you do that, if you want to keep it, I guess my thought is it's stuff that you have to track anyway. Is it almost like number 2?
Personally, I'm not wild about keeping it.
I'm not either.
So we generally have a chapter on that anyway, and kind of tracks it.
I have nothing to add.
You have a whole
Under
portion of
that,
the plan that's
yeah.
devoted to this information, and I don't think you need to duplicate it. It's just work twice.
Didn't Victoria go to MIT? Maybe that's it's way above me, so. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of space dedicated to that, like you said, somewhere else in the plan. I don't know.
Well, and even if you get to, even if you do targets and then you get, I mean, we're not gonna score anything against this. So, okay, are we all head nodding delete?
Just delete this one. Okay.
Tim, did you have a thought on that?
Nope.
I did have a question. So from the last workshop, we had a alternative modes
Yeah,
objective.
so I was going to get to that real quick.
All right.
Um,
I didn't remember if we agreed to,
So that was,
Take it
Didn't we say that was in goal 2, though?
that was
yeah,
We say it was already in a goal, we were like doubling up.
okay.
We thought, yeah, 'cause this
Yes.
it's non-motorized. Do we need to move alternative modes over there with it?
Okay,
Under that goal, improve.
yeah.
So you're talking about
And,
objective number 2 under goal 3, the non-motorized objective. So at the workshop, we just couldn't come to a consensus on how to measure it. We almost thought about doing it the same as saying that, putting a note under it saying explore options for collecting / establishing a baseline. We had that same note under objective number 4, under the goal number 1, which is kind of the same type of thing. Having a note, explore options for collecting data, just kind of leaving it at that for now. Wasn't sure if anyone had additional thoughts.
And I know I had a enhance transit, fixed route transit ridership, but that's covered under,
So we'll get to that one in 1 second.
Okay, sorry.
I have that on the list as well, but for this one, staff had more discussion on it since the workshop, and I added a few more possible ways to measure it. So I have those listed here, like the percentage of major healthcare facilities served by more than one mode of transportation, or the percentage of the top 50 employment sites that are served by more than one mode of transportation. So things like that, those are other possible ways we could measure this objective. So I'm not sure if anyone has thoughts on that, but. And then we could also just do the top of just continue to explore options for collecting data.
Whole separate non-motorized plan and the last plan, and, I mean, how does this jive up with some of those things? 'Cause
Yeah. So we had a point in there on the non-motorized plan. In that we had, in the non-motorized plan, there's a list of improvement corridors in the region.
Okay, so you got it in there.
Yeah, that was the best kind of possible way I could figure out how to integrate it with this. But those improvement corridors, the way they were identified was kind of based on how many potential places they connect to. So things like how many parks or schools and stuff like that, and also how many accidents have occurred on them. So kind of safety. So it takes into account a bunch of things. So that's another option we could use.
Tim?
Have you all been able to, didn't your regional plan file get corrupt?
Or which one?
Your regional non-motorized plan files? Were they corrupted last summer? Because does your plan now show the 21 corridors that went to the board for approval?
I hadn't heard any discussion about it being corrupted.
Craig had told me. And then
Is it the one that's on our website or the one that we've got on our server?
well, the one on your website doesn't reflect the 21 corridors that was adopted.
I don't know. I haven't had that discussion.
Because at TAC, the file showed the 10, and then Emily, we brought up the 21 corridors, and Emily said that map be updated to show the 21, and it still doesn't.
I remember Kate Brady requested some information from us not long after she started, and I sort of recall a conversation like that with Craig saying there was some problem with
Yes.
files, but I know nothing more than that. So
I-
you're not imagining things.
No, I saved all those emails. I have the emails, and then might even have the email with Emily on it. But it was at the TAC meeting whenever it was part of my motion for approval
So we should be able to get a clean copy from Davies Glebe, right?
for us.
Or somewhere, yeah.
I will check and see
Okay.
what we've got. But I wasn't in on that conversation, so I don't know.
Okay. I have the email too.
No, I trust you.
So, Kevin, this is under connectivity and accessibility,
Yeah, under goal number 3.
and so this is all data that can be collected. That's why it's on the list, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Any thoughts? I mean, stuff looks pretty good.
For the one we had here, the top 50 employment sites, we had just this internal discussion with staff. We talked about whatever, it could be 50, it could be 10, whatever it is, but we talked about maybe doing it per entity instead of as a region, because most of these would probably end up in this city, in the city. So we talked about, okay, top 10 employment sites in Woodland Park, top 10 employment sites in Colorado Springs, top 10 employment sites in El Paso County, kind of doing it on an individual basis. So that's, I didn't have it written there, but that's kind of the thought process with that one.
I think that's a great shot across the bow. Initial attempt at, and you may find that after you do the first, first gather of information, that some of it is, it may lead us to say maybe we need to focus maybe less on the county and more on the city, because that's where we really need to be. I think it's a great way to start, is look at the top 10 of each.
Okay.
And then maybe you want to tailor your the data gathering to what we feel is important at the time.
Okay. So you think this is kind of going in the right direction here then, this
I think so.
specific?
I did.
Data for you to gather.
I did look at the top 50, and there were none in Teller County. Not inside the MPO. There was a Cripple Creek mine, and there were several casinos, but they're not inside the MPO area,
So this is number of employees, right?
based on the number of
That's what's-
employees.
Yeah. Mhm.
The top
So
employee.
nothing in
employment
Woodland
site.
Park, which is basically all that we have in Teller County.
Is that the data you have is based upon number of employees?
Yeah, it's from the Info USA database, commercial database of employees by company.
Is there something else you'd rather see? Because we also have the CoStar data set, which has a lot of information about square footage, type of business, all these other attributes.
I guess there's a lot of ways to define the top 50 or 10 employers. I mean, because there's many different ways to measure that. I mean, for example, Fort
1.3
Carson
billion.
and the military bases, they're not nonprofit, but it's not like they have a huge impact to our area.
Yeah, they just have to measure that every year to see what the economic impact is to the local community. But it's not broken out by areas, just what their economic impact is. Their finance person has to do that.
Schriever showed up as one of the top 50 employers. Peterson had 2 or 3, Fort Carson had 2, just because of the way that the military organizations under the different commands report stuff, that however Info USA got their data, it was reported as different employers. I think from our perspective, we're just saying DOD or the Air Force versus the Army, if we even want to get into that detail, or each base could be a separate employer regardless of whether they got civilians or military working on them.
I just kind of struggle, like, saying access to Schriever being equal with, improvements to whatever school districts in Woodland Park. As a major trip generator.
Well, there's where Kevin's idea of taking the top 5, top 10 in each community.
Well, that's my point is, I don't think they're apples to apples.
You don't see a school as being equivalent to, school system as equivalent to an industrial complex.
I don't see 20,000 well, I don't know how many, several thousand employment center compared to 100
Right.
should be equals.
I think that's getting more at the improvement corridors identified in the non-motorized. I think that gets at what your point is, Tim, of they're really not apples to apples, and kind of
Okay.
takes the nuances.
So the top 2 employers in Palmer Lake, you don't think would compare to the top 2 employers
Don't think it should be
in
equal.
Manitou or the county? Certainly not in scale. I mean, I don't know who's in Palmer Lake, but, they might have a restaurant and might be the biggest number of employers. I'm surprised at how many employees a restaurant hires. But, there were 6 Walmarts that showed up scattered around the region as the top employers.
Well, for example, Fort Carson, I think, is the number 2 employer
In the state.
in the state, and that's in unincorporated El Paso County, so that's pretty interesting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
And yet we can't do any projects on the military bases. So all we would be talking about under that is access to them.
Which is
And
very
yet,
important.
I don't know, Brian, what's the current rule? I know it used to be that MMT could not go on the military bases. Has that been relaxed? Are you,
Yeah, we've been out of Fort Carson for several years now.
Okay.
And a couple of years ago, we went to Peterson's Gate. And that's been removed too. We don't go
Okay.
up to their gate anymore, just because it's,
I know,
each installation has their own rules, and, over the decades, we've been on Fort Carson, and we've been off, and
Okay.
Peterson used to have their own shuttle that met our buses at the gate, and then they got rid of that, so we were just dropping our passengers off at the gate, and they'd have to find their own way in, so it was just,
I remember.
we don't have.
one time period, there was a CMAQ application for a bus route to a military base, and I don't remember which one. And it was ruled ineligible because it was not open to the public, because the public could not go on the military base
Right.
even if the bus did, or something like that. So that's why I asked the question.
But one of our important projects in El Paso County was on South Academy, where we did do non-motorized, which connected, you know, the south part of, you know, South Academy to
PPCC.
PPCC, and then also makes a connection over to the base. So
Mhm.
that was a great project.
Yeah. Defense Access Road, whatever they call it.
So back to the top 50 employment sites. So this staff recommendation is it's for the top for each local entity rather than within the region.
We could do it both ways, but we just had that internal discussion of, do we want to do it as a region as a whole, or do we want to do it just based on each entity? And it's, you know, both, each way has its benefits and.
Also, we talked about it being kind of like the special pot of money for small projects approach, that maybe you still want to give enough weight to the absolute 50 largest in our region. Then you also recognize that there are a few places in Woodland Park, to use Ken's example, that are a big deal for Woodland Park. So you don't want to just say, that's not a major trip generator for Woodland Park. But I also don't think it's fair to compare, you know, Walmart in Woodland Park to the biggest employment center in our region. So we would have to find a way to reconcile that, I think.
So we thought the hard part was behind us.
Yes.
What's the target again? Can you go up again?
Yeah.
Sometimes you lose sight. Non-motorized.
Focus on closing gaps.
In the non.
Did we go with the second bullet? You know, what's already been identified in the current non-motorized plan? And then drop all the other bullets below that? Same thing with major healthcare facilities. I mean, they're kind of, they're not
Well,
really
my
distributed
concern,
very well.
you know, with focusing on the second bullet, is that doesn't address pedestrian gaps, handicap gaps. It was only bicycles.
I think it had both in there.
That was the primary
had both.
focus. Now, I may be wrong because I've never read that plan. I wasn't involved in its development. You were, Tim.
Yeah, it was bike and ped.
Yeah, it was both.
Yeah. And, you know, the top 10 corridors were in the city, but we dropped them. We dropped 3 of them so that there would be a regional aspect. So,
I think it would be good to at least have that one, but I think it also makes sense to maybe have something else, because I think that when you're looking at the non-motorized plan, it was looking at those major corridors, and I think it is important to recognize that, you know, there are really schools that you have to serve by some of these gaps, and those are pretty important. Our safety of our students and our children. I mean, I know you probably get phone calls on it all the time, and so do we, so I think there's also opportunities to serve that. But, I mean, I do agree, I mean, there's a whole lot of work that went into that non-motorized plan, and I think you have to keep that bullet, but I think you also maybe have to have something else that accomplishes some of these other important locations, because those weren't part of that major corridors. I mean, you're looking at trying to make sure that we focus on those major corridors and develop those, but there's some gaps, I think, that, I'll tell you, we did with our CBDG money and our TAP money that we did, the improvements that we did along the Fontaine Boulevard were huge for that area, and we were able to get people who were in wheelchairs off the road, so, and provide bus shelters, so. And that wasn't part of the overall non-motorized plan, but, I mean, some of those small things can make a huge difference in some of those areas. And that was right next to a school.
Yeah.
It sounds like we want to keep the non-motorized part as one of the scoring factors, but then, one of the factors to look at, and then add an additional one, so we're not limited with that. Do any of these other ones, any of these other ones adequate, or do we want to create a new one?
I would like to see whatever other one we come up with, to get to Jennifer's point, kind of replace those lower three.
Okay. So,
When we were looking at, something that's completely separate, but I think may help focus a little bit. When we were looking at active shooter scenarios, when I was in the military, we would focus on what were population centers that would be the most vulnerable. And so we look at things like housing areas, child development centers, shopping areas, and the like. But we used the word, it was a population center. It didn't have to do where they're housed, but where they were. And I think, would it be possible to use that same terminology to look at percentage of population centers, and we could define that further if we wanted to include things like major employment centers, schools, shopping centers, and the like.
And I think
And not necessarily, population isn't necessarily residents.
the regional non-motorized plan actually defines it too, so.
Oh, so there you go. So we could go to
use
that.
So yeah, in this non-motorized plan list of corridors, they have a list for each corridor, how many schools it connects to, how many parks it connects to, I think how many employment centers it connects to. That was part of the criteria for making that an improvement corridor.
I'm just thinking from a transit standpoint, I mean, there's some really great small infill projects that you probably could do, do those gaps that are probably not on that non-motorized plan, but will probably have a lot of benefit to the community. So I guess I just don't want to I just want to make sure we don't leave that out.
I like that. Employment center.
And I just don't want to focus on a project that we did in the county. I'm just trying to think.
Right, no.
It's bigger than.
Build-
Tim, did the plan, the non-motorized plan, define employment centers?
That was activity centers, I believe.
Did they define it?
Uh-huh. And, well, it wasn't
Not that activity.
So it says employment centers, areas of employment within the corridor. These areas can be clusters of employment where an area is split. I don't know what that means.
That includes schools, parks.
Yeah, so this is kind of what that encompasses there.
That's what it was, is employment centers. So, the regional non-motorized plan certainly wasn't comprehensive. And I think having something that does address these employment health centers would be something to add. Maybe we could sculpt a bullet around that. Schools, employment.
So this is kind of what it looks like for identifying. So corridor 1, it's 9.9 miles. It connects to 2 schools, 3 employment centers, 3 parks, other 0.
What's other defined as?
Let's see.
It wouldn't be worth it.
Other number of other
Churches.
Wendy, are you
civic
leaving?
buildings,
places of
public
worship.
areas.
Okay.
We're going to lose our quorum.
Quick, make a motion.
You have my support in the changes you're making. I mean, I know that you know what you're doing, so if we need to do that, then I'll be happy to.
Can we just quickly fashion a bullet that
Yeah.
asks staff to address it with those things that are in the non-motorized plan?
Add a bullet that,
So do we want to delete these bottom 3 bullets then, or these?
yes, restructure those into a bullet that says, that addresses what you just pulled up as far as, were the employment centers? What was it, activity centers, or what was it?
Employment centers, I think it was called at least.
No, it was bigger than employment centers. It wasn't just employment centers. It was
Employment centers.
employment centers, parks, other.
Go up a little.
Scroll up.
Yeah, I think
To
you
the
had it.
top.
It was
Where you had that
It
definition.
said
Keep going.
employment centers up here.
Right there.
within the
It
corridor.
was-
Other attributes, other significant attributes such as schools, parks,
Employment
or
centers.
attributes as defined in the non-motorized plan?
There you
There you
go.
go.
That's it.
Okay, so let's go here.
It's you. Look at you.
I am
So let's
all
Let's
about
make a target.
consensus.
So let's
Victoria taught me well.
let's figure out how do we want to word that.
Attributes identified in the regional non-motorized plan. Isn't that what you're?
Yeah.
I was joking about making a motion, but it is almost 4 o'clock, and I don't know how much more you want to look at, rather than making a motion if you feel you need to look at more. I hate to see it delayed, but I
Yeah,
don't like
I'd like
motions.
to get this done if we could.
I don't like motions if people have not reviewed and commented on everything and say, we approve as long as staff fixes it the way we want. I don't,
One thing I think you also have today is that you don't have anybody here either. It's another issue. But that's just, you can't expect to have everybody sitting at the table all the time, every time, so.
Is,
Well, I don't know. I mean, the options are to have a special TAC meeting sometime later this month, or just let it slip till next month.
I think we're almost done.
Can
I
we do an
think
email vote? I mean, we're really close.
probably, if we were to not do it this month, I think we could certainly get it done pretty quickly next month.
This is the only thing we're missing, right?
This is it.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's do it by email.
Can we do an email vote?
Send it-
I don't think we're allowed to do an email vote, unfortunately. We
Why don't you do it?
ran into some trouble with that.
You do that?
I'd rather have a special than let it
Okay.
decide and then.
We're like right 2 minutes away from.
Do we wanna-
Gotta go.
What about,
I still have an hour to drive south.
what's this thing again? Non-motorized.
Wendy's gotta go.
Enhanced non-motorized facilities, bleh. I don't know.
You're good.
Enhanced non-motorized facilities according to attributes, I don't know, locations, attributes or locations identified
was-
in the regional non-motorized plan.
It was titled attributes, so
Yeah.
let's just go with that. Okay, that's it.
Second.
So that's is that our target or is that our objective? Focus on closing gaps. Do we want to, I mean, this could be almost a target, or an objective, I mean.
I think that's what we're trying to get to, right?
Well, we're trying to get to a target here. So we have 626 miles identified as corridors. The region has a total of 1,400 miles. Improvement corridors cover 42.8% of the regional road network. From that, we would want to make a target of, hit 50% of the regional road network, or whatever that is.
Like maintain and improve by
Yeah.
something percent.
So do we want this as the objective then? Enhance non-motorized facilities according, and then from there, we try to shoot for a target based on what we have here.
Yes.
Yes, increase.
Okay, so let me
number
just,
of-
I'm going to replace that. Enhance, does that make sense?
Yes,
Go down here, and we'll say, so here we have 42.8% of the regional road network is covered by corridors. So we want to try to reduce that number because, but by reducing that number, we will have addressed the corridors that are identified as needs. So I guess we would want to try to reduce this to 30% or whatever that number is.
what about just reduce?
I don't think we're gonna get there, are we? Are we? Wendy's gotta go.
We need to honor that.
Yeah.
Like, we can just,
Yep, that's fine. We'll have a special meeting.
Reduce reduce
We'll miss the
the,
tax, so it doesn't matter. We're gonna be behind a month if we don't get it out, so.
reduce the number of miles of identified corridors in the plan still needing improvements. reduce the number of corridors or reduce the miles identified,
Is that good?
reduce, needing improvements.
You guys good with that? Wendy, you good with that?
She's gone. Oh. But, it's,
Wendy,
but
say
we
yes.
don't, we don't want to limit ourselves to the non-motorized.
Say
corridors
yes.
Only. I think it should be in general.
All right, she voted, make a motion.
It's kind of all that we have to go on now at this point, right? Is an adopted non-motorized plan.
I'm not sure that we're ready yet. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Wendy. See ya.
Thanks, Wendy.
All right. So do we want to leave it for this? Leave it as this for now, and then come back to it next month?
Yeah.
Want to have a special meeting?
Special TAC meeting?
Could have it
You needed to.
maybe Tuesday before the CAC.
Oh, yeah.
The intent is to try to get it before the CAC meets, right? I mean, so we don't lose a
It'd
month.
be nice, because they always ask, what did TAC say and do?
All right, so let's take a step and really look at this. Does anybody else have to leave right away?
Nope.
And then we'll have it solid for a quick meeting before the CAC, of which PPACG will supply a
Well,
lunch.
and maybe
We're not allowed to.
Do we not still have a quorum right now? I thought we just
We
needed
lost a
three.
quorum.
Okay.
Or,
I thought we needed 3 TAC members.
I say we go ahead and try and finish this, that way they have it ready and we can just vote on it and be done with
And
it,
gone.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Let's get this solid so we don't have to come back and
Yeah.
do brain damage.
So it sounds like, are we in agreement on how to measure this first one with the non-motorized plan corridors?
Let's go to the top. Let's see.
Okay.
Right there, the objective.
Okay.
Attributes identified as regional. Yeah.
Okay. So,
So is this where we take out workshop again, where the TAC recommends?
oh, yeah. So it sounds like do we want to delete this paragraph here?
I kind of like the second sentence, though. Maintain or improve non-motorized infrastructure conditions.
No, all I was saying is take out the word workshop.
or take out the whole first sentence, but.
Yeah, because that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll just say TAC recommends.
We work to maintain.
Oh, this is the baseline data. This is the baseline data? Okay.
So,
Is that a target?
yeah,
Yeah.
this would be a target.
Target.
Based on this target, we don't have the data for a baseline based on this. But we can certainly try to use it as a target and use it on a more of a case-by-case basis. As we get a project submitted to us, we would, instead of, if it wasn't on the improvement corridor list, we would look at, scoring that project based on this instead of if that makes sense.
So let's move that to target.
Okay.
And then so here we need to state the regional non-motorized plan data is our baseline. Is that what we're trying to say?
That's the one way I could find how to measure for a baseline. Yeah.
And so although, as somebody has commented, there are other sidewalks, other roads that are not on those 16 or 21, whatever the number of corridors, we're recognizing the effort that was put into the plan, and it's the regional approved non-motorized plan, and so we're saying that this is where we would focus first.
And the discussion when it was approved was the regional non-motorized would have priority, but then the like secondary would be the rest, not to be excluding any other.
It could be a way to do it, yeah. The second one here, work to maintain, improve infrastructure condition. That doesn't necessarily have to be quantitative. The way we would score that would be, does this project improve or maintain infrastructure condition? And, it just could be kind of a yes or no thing. Whereas the non-motorized one would be a little more quantitative.
Can you scroll back up, please, Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm not sure that's baseline data right there. Improvement corridors for the region. Well, the first sentence isn't.
Do we know how many trails, sidewalks? We don't, do we?
Yeah.
I don't want you to have to measure that.
Thank you, we don't either.
Heck, I don't even know how much I have.
That's it, we would actually turn around and ask you. Well,
Exactly.
we will add up
It's
what
an
everybody
attachment.
has
Please send it to us, yeah.
as soon as you tell us.
Yeah.
I'm just lucky I have the lane miles of roads in the county. I mean, what's our overall goal? I mean, our overall goal is to make sure that we provide more non-motorized facilities and keep the ones that we have well, right? I mean,
Eliminate gaps or close the gaps, yeah.
Yeah, the objective was close gaps, focus on closing gaps. And there are, we've talked about this and kidded around. We don't have an inventory of gaps. The closest thing we come to is the non-motorized plan that at least identified a number of gaps, on certain corridors.
I think having the non-motorized integrated here kind of gets at doing it in a strategic way, kind of prioritizing.
maybe the baseline data isn't so important. Maybe what's important is the target.
The what? Sorry.
The target.
Oh,
Were there certain goals included in the non-motorized plan?
Well, I think the goals were just the improvement corridors, just basically kind of address those. That was kind of the
The
the vision.
improve those.
Yeah.
So one
To
of our
develop
things
them.
is to focus on those improvement corridors,
Mhm.
but also focus on the other attributes identified in there, right?
Well, I think there's 71 corridors overall in the non-motorized
The
study,
main
with the
corridors, right?
main ones being, there's 21 main ones. So with the thought that through the PPACG processes, priority would be given to the 20, actually the top 10, and then
And
the
in the
second
top 10,
10.
there was pretty much one for every kind of entity, kind of.
Right.
Because that was spread around purposefully.
Mhm. Come on, Jennifer, we need your
I'm trying to
your
think
brain
through
here.
it.
So it sounds
So
like,
isn't a target to do improvements on those top corridors in the non-motorized plan?
So the thought was that the top 10 would be the priority corridors
Yeah,
for the
in the
region.
priority corridors, maybe that's what it is.
So the target should be, well, I like the targets.
Reduce the number of miles identified.
Well, the target by itself, although it doesn't have, because we don't know the baseline, so it can be an unspecified target. Then when you get into scoring, if there were 10 out of however many total corridors that the plan looked at, if there were 10 that were the very top priority, something on them would score the best, something on the other 16 or 21,
Second,
would score
yeah.
second best, and every other corridor that was considered would score something, and anything
Right.
that wasn't ever even considered might score the lowest. So there would be that kind of a hierarchy that could be developed if you just use that first bullet there the way it's phrased. Not knowing the baseline outside of the non-motorized plan, I have no idea to say that we want to reduce sidewalk gaps, handicap, cuts by X percent, because I don't know how many are left that need to be done.
But at least that bullet ties back to the baseline somehow.
And that was the intent in the discussion through TAC and everybody else's. Top 10 get priority, second 10, and then the rest, like you're saying.
So that
then-
could be addressed in scoring
So then we need to,
without getting into a target discussion.
I'm okay with those targets.
but you're saying get rid of the second target? I mean, the second bullet? Ken?
Well, to me, the first one is included in the second one. So if you want to focus on the plan, as Jennifer said, that we spend a lot of time and effort on that, and let's implement it, then I would drop the second one.
I'm okay with that too, because essentially we're going to address this in the scoring.
Right.
And that's one less target that PPACG has to try and measure. I don't know how you'd measure that anyway,
Yeah.
other than saying,
It's like a
we did X
duplication of
many
one.
projects on this. It's one more target that you have to measure. Why
Let's take that second bullet out.
Okay.
provide yourself more hassle?
So before we do that, or, the second one said non-motorized infrastructure improvements. The first one says non-motorized improvement corridors. Are the improvement corridors bicycle specific?
No.
So they include
Pedestrian.
pedestrian? Okay. All right, yeah, that's good, get rid of the second one. I thought if the first one was more cycling focused,
That
we'd be
was my
missing it.
concern when I first heard it, that the non-motorized plan
Yeah,
didn't really address anything other than bicycle.
okay, all right,
It apparently does, and so
all right, that's good.
so is all this the objective and the baseline data and the target? Those all look pretty good, or? All right.
Yeah.
So we just have one more, and it should be pretty straightforward. Is mostly a question for Brian here with the enhanced fixed route transit.
Yeah,
We have a target of maintain or increase the population within 1/4 mile of a transit stop.
yeah.
Wasn't sure, did you have any luck with the data on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, we have to establish that baseline. So, I mean, if you get rid of, how can we measure this, and just put in, the baseline data is going to be the number of residences within a quarter mile of a transit stop. And we can do that, we have to do it to get a baseline.
Yeah.
So,
Are you looking to measure now, or are you looking to actually execute?
Well,
Do you already have the information about transit stops and how many people they service?
yes, yeah.
locally? So I presume you already have that.
Yeah, I mean, we have everything, we just have to do the function of doing it, and then we can have our baseline. And,
So in terms of making a target, I mean, it sounds like we don't have the data for that today. Do we want to just, how would we go about doing that for?
well, I think the target's good. I mean, we're going to either maintain the number of residences
Oh,
or
I see.
increase
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So maintain or increase the number of residences, not population.
Okay, so you want residences now?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, yeah, number of residences, so just so it
Right.
matches the baseline data.
I pushed to have that changed to population because we had a lot of people that have commented, or maybe it was just a few people very verbally, how are you going to do that? We're going to build more homes? And that's how they were interpreting residences, that we were building homes, and that's not the function of transportation.
Well, or we expand our system.
Yeah, but they didn't read it that way. They were immediately thinking of by residences, they were focused on homes.
We're maintaining or increasing the population as opposed to maintaining or increasing the number of transit stops.
We could put in one apartment building, is that one residence? Or if it's got 25 apartments in that, is that 25 residences? Or does it really matter? Because what I'm thinking we're more interested in is the number of people served, not the residences. So that was just,
That data, are you going to do it off of census data related to that location? Because if that's the case, then it really is the.
Well, I mean, we were thinking of, I mean, we have a bus stop shapefile, and we have our routes, and we have parcel data. And that's why we were looking at residences and not really attaching population to those residences.
Is it just residences, or is it population density, like work and residences?
It's really parcels then. It's parcels.
see, and that's the problem. You've got the parcel data, but you don't have the number of people per parcel. We've got the
Right.
census data for 2015 or whatever year we want to use. That gives us the population per block. And depending on the area, we can get the number of housing units, total or occupied. But even if we just use the number of people, then you can do a GIS exercise, assuming uniform distribution of people within that block, and that's not always true, but that's
Right.
what you have to assume, that you can calculate the number of people
Yeah.
in a quarter-mile buffer around either your linear route or around individual bus stops.
Right.
However, we determine is the best way of doing it. But whether you're talking residences or whether you're talking a polygon and assume uniform distribution, you're measuring slightly different things. Whether
Yeah.
the answer is really significantly different, I don't know.
I wonder what's the process, it's somewhat rhetorical, what the process that y'all use now for deciding if another stop is needed or if another bus, if you will, is needed on an existing route just because of the population increase. I mean, you should know, but I guess, you know,
Right.
like that on how many, you know, how many pickups are on a certain route or
Yeah.
whatever else.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, we have service standards for stop spacing and, you know, the ridership at those stops and what type of amenity, whether they get a full-on shelter or just a bench or just a pole. And we have, you know, service standards for load capacity. I mean, if there's
So Brian, are those?
25 seats and they're all full and there's 10 people standing consistently, you know, then we should put another bus on it. But yeah, yeah.
Sounds like you have enough data, it's just going to be extrapolating it to how do you incorporate supporting the population.
Yeah. No, I'd be all right with doing population. I just thought that, you know, using the smallest census geography, we'd still be kind of not too accurate. You know, if the block group is the smallest geography, right?
Well,
That may go beyond a quarter mile
Yeah.
of a stop.
So, yeah, you
we're
have to
counting
make-
people that aren't really, yeah.
You have to make that assumption that this half of that block has got the same density as that half, because I'm only counting this half.
Yeah.
So, but your parcel data, it has no population associated with it, right?
I believe it doesn't.
So if
yeah.
you take a parcel, which is right now a single-family home, and you convert that to an apartment, standing 10 stories tall, you've certainly increased the population served, and even though it's still only one parcel.
Right, yeah.
Um,
Brian, are you really trying to increase your ridership?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the, yeah.
So, I mean, is your baseline data your existing ridership or some time of ridership?
Well, we have that somewhere else in here. I think under mobility, we have overall ridership. No, that's all right. So we were just trying to kind of measure something from a different way. I mean, population's great if you think we can.
Well, if we use parcel data, just as long as we're talking workload and stuff, you'd have to do the work because we don't have access to parcel data.
So it sounds like, well, the proposed target here is worded how you want it with the word population then? Is that fair to say?
Sure.
Okay.
So
then-
what you're saying is that you'll be able to help us with that?
Well, Tom already did that. Our GIS person already did that exercise for me for the small area forecast, and so we ended up with the people per household based on the population in the block group and the parcel data.
All right.
So we might have to recreate it. I don't know when that license expired if we didn't renew it, but at least we have someone who knows how to do it.
Or we could use
That
that
was-
as our baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever year it
Our
was.
license
Yeah.
for that parcel data died.
Okay.
But we could tell you how to do it.
And the problem is that, you know, to get it again, we've got to pay many, many thousands of dollars.
Okay.
So it
All right.
would be something that we would ask you to do
Mhm.
if we're going to use the parcel data, because ours is becoming outdated, or certainly will be outdated by the next time we want to do
Okay.
this.
So you said there was a way to use parcel data but attach population to that? Okay.
So I'll just make a note here, say, use parcel data with population, I guess.
By census block group.
And then we can just do that internally and then just have a baseline there based on what year we.
Brian will do that internally.
Okay. But it sounds like this is okay with how we have the target here worded and the objective up there, and then we just got to figure out what the baseline is.
Mhm.
We should be good to go. So we won't need to follow up with that.
It goes back to a question Ken had earlier. Are we really going to increase the population?
Where's the density?
Increase the population
Or you-
served.
Or we yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to
Good.
use the word served
Yeah,
there.
Population served.
Brian, does transit stop encompass your hub too? If you have transit stop, is that also included your,
All the transfer centers.
Yeah, the transfer
downtown
centers.
terminals, yeah.
I just want to make sure it doesn't exclude that.
Transit
Yeah, right,
facility
Right,
or
yeah.
facility.
Yeah, of a,
I didn't know if you considered that one of your stops, so. just wanted to
Right.
make sure.
It's just a big stop.
yeah, I think that's good the way it is, and yeah, we'll assume that, yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm good with that. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, I think we did it. That's all I have. And if anyone else has anything else to add to the list there, but those are the only things that we needed to talk about.
All right. Bethany, now, is our quorum 5? I mean, we're pretty sure of that? Okay, all right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for this? Did anybody? Yeah, thank you. Anybody?
Trying to find common ground.
Yeah, we can't vote on this, so.
That's good stuff.
So I guess we'll just send a poll out to try to get a date and time for a quick meeting of the full membership.
And we'll get this sent out.
Okay.
So it should be good for you, for the others that haven't even seen it yet.
Okay, yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Are we okay with tabling these other items? Or do you guys want to move forward? Huh?
Can I just say one thing real quick? All I really wanted to get out was if there's a stack of postcards on the table by the door, please, those remaining, take, a third or a quarter of them or whatever, and help us get the word out. It's about our needs identification. We have an online mapping tool that you can go and pan around the map and drop a pin and make a comment about, we need to see a bike lane here or a transit stop there, things like that. It's for the general public.
Okay.
We have a North Nevada meeting tonight. Can I take a big chunk of it?
Yeah, if you want to come up, we have more upstairs that I can give you.
Well, I don't think there's like 40 people or something.
One thing I just want to mention about the tip delay policy, I just want to make sure the list I have in the packet is correct. I know Tim Roberts, you sent me a new list. We have that included in the CAC mailout, so we were able to update that. Just want to make sure everyone's fine with that list because I'm going to be taking that to CAC next week. So that should be pretty straightforward. And that's really all we had for the tip delay policy.
Did you look at that, Tim? Everybody else good with it?
Yes.
All right. So can we push this off until next month then?
I think that's all we needed to do for that.
Okay.
The tip delay policy was just making sure everyone was okay with it. That's really for the CAC. They asked for it to see that.
Okay.
So I'm going to be bringing that up next week, and if they have additional questions, I will bring them back to the TAC next month for follow-up. But I think everyone gave me the descriptions of their projects as to why they might be delayed and the kind of the timeline. So that should be sufficient for the CAC this month.
So if they have questions, it comes back here and doesn't move forward.
There are board members that are already
Yeah,
interested.
we do have board members that are.
They're aware that it's coming through the committee, so they're looking forward to seeing it next month.
But if they do have questions, I can certainly reach out to you individually and tell you that they had questions, and we can prepare that for the board before the.
Are they voting on it, or is it just,
It's just a discussion item.
At this point, it's just strictly information, because
Yeah.
I just want to know if I should have the project managers at the meeting.
Probably would be a good idea.
If they're
I would
able to
think.
come,
Yeah.
that would certainly make it easier on us, and the CAC would definitely appreciate it if that's possible.
Yeah, and I'll bring something more formal about the scenarios next month, so we don't need to table that. It'll be something else.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday at 3.
3 o'clock.
Yep.
sometime between now and 3 o'clock Wednesday.
You do it right. We think we all like the answer. You do it right before the CAC, and stick around before the CAC, to get any questions. Or some.
That could be good. Does that work?
Because we did that at the last CAC meeting, I think that assisted in getting some of this through previously. Right?
Yeah.
We gotta do a poll and make sure we can get 5 people.
Yeah.
So,
I'll do a doodle poll. I'll do that doodle poll, but have that as an option on there because that would be the efficient way to do
And
it.
it has to be advertised 24 hours in advance.
All right.
That seemed to be a benefit to us in the last CAC.
Mm-hmm.
But, the four of you plus Wendy would make a quorum, and you've seen it. The others haven't seen it yet, but we would hope that they would show up and make their comments.
Yeah, that is true. So we're hoping for a quick meeting at that special meeting.
Depending on who shows it, may
Yeah.
you may have to explain it all again.
Mhm. Yeah.
How we got to where we is.
Well, that's,
I'll vote on
I disagree.
yeah, that's the problem. They don't have the 3-hour history that we just went through
Yeah.
developing it.
Yeah.
So how much do you have to re-explain to?
I guess maybe that's a good decision based upon the doodle poll, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
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 Pick the date and time that works for
Us.
the 5 of us, yeah. But, oops, my. Yeah. Yeah, no, that will work. And, if it is a special meeting, the chances of a lot of people being able to make it may not be too high. So,
I think what we've done today is defensible.
Mhm.
It's explainable.
Yeah.
And it has, I think, across-the-board support.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I don't see a problem.
Yeah. All right. All right, anything else from anybody?
I just want to mention, we finished our Fontaine project. It's substantially complete. We still have a few things to do, but we had a great partnership with Mountain Metro Transit. We were able to put in some bus facilities there as well, so I think it was a great successful project. We're going to be trying to close that out, so, because there's some monies that are probably left over there, and get those back into the pool.
Very good. Congratulations. Yeah, that's good.
Good staff who did great work.
All right, anything else?
I've got if anybody's interested, there's a North Nevada corridor meeting tonight, starting at 6. It's more of a workshop, so any interest there. What else? The little crossover for the Cimarron interchange from US 24 to 8th Street should be open by tomorrow, if not already today. So we'll see how that's working. Other than that, I think you and the staff are doing a good job.
Thank you.
All right, and we're having 3 public meetings next Tuesday and Wednesday for an additional service change that we're going to do this fall. We're proposing to add another vehicle to Route 11, which goes from downtown terminal down to PPCC, and that will actually help the on-time performance of both Route 11 and Route 10.
So by adding another vehicle, do you reduce the headway, or?
Expand the headway, so they have a little bit more recovery time at each end and kind of adjust the intermediate time points. And because they run, Route 10 and 11 operate on the same South Nevada corridor from downtown terminal to Southgate before they split off, and then they come back together before they get to PPCC. So by doing that, we'll be able to improve on-time performance. Yeah, we've been having trouble with those routes. It's a busy corridor. There's a lot going on there, and we have the money for it, and it would be a good, useful improvement. So one meeting on Tuesday at the downtown terminal, I think 9:30 to 10:30, and then 9:30 to 10:30 on Wednesday at City Hall, and then 5 to 6 at City Hall. So, all right.
Did you have any other upcoming public meetings on the new downtown terminal?
That's a good question. Thank you. So we finished the downtown transit station relocation study in the fall, and then what came out of that were three sites that were very feasible to move forward to put a new center on that site. And the mayor appointed a steering committee early this year, and they met from February or March until last month. And then just this past Monday, the steering committee made their recommendation to the mayor, and the mayor accepted it. So there will be some information coming out very soon, but the 3 sites were southwest corner of Colorado and Cucharis and Salwatch and Sierra Madre, so right where that old bookstore is, and there's a piano shop and an old U.S. Postal Service maintenance facility. So it's 3/4 of that block. And if you listen to the order of that, you'll kind of know the results of the recommendation. The second priority site was directly to the east of the Pioneers Museum, so in between Nevada and Weber, and Vermajo and Costilla, I think. Yeah. Yep. No, it's the site where the old Colorado Springs Health Partners is, and the Independent. Yep. That was site 2, the priority 2, and then the third site was the 2 blocks of Pueblo Avenue. They're the 2 diagonal blocks in between Nevada and Wasatch. So, sure, yep. So that's really exciting because we kind of, over 2 decades, we've studied this. This is the 7th time, And we're still in the same facility that we've been in for 40 years, since 1976, 41 years. And so we're making some progress and hope it continues. And I think we're probably going to plan on an informational briefing to the Board of County Commissioners, because there's a lot of, county property in close vicinity to those. So, and we'll be presenting to council and trying to get a council resolution on that. So, and there were some, there was county representation on that steering committee also. So. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you all. This was a great, long meeting, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Fort Tim.